but the moves came into Spain somewhere, I think 7th, 8th century. And there was this Amir who created this different caliphate in Spain, and they were in power till the end of the 15th century. And you realize that the language is filled with words which have the Arabic origin. Like, it's amazing the kind of words that exist. Arroz, arroz is rice, and they keep saying ohala, which is a variation of inshallah. So God will. So yeah, and lots and lots of other asukar, which is sugar, so lots of words which you hear and you immediately know that it's got an Arabic influence. Champu, which is shampoo, habon, which is sabun. So lots of words which are familiar to us as well because of the Persian and the Islamic influence that we have in our languages. So yeah, so that was a huge revelation to me. And therefore, I got it when people said Alhambra, looks like the Golconda Fort, or the Golconda Fort looks like Alhambra, because the fort came later. Well, the original fort came earlier, but whatever. There was this amazing time when I actually was making pani-puris on the beach.
What? Oh, what? You made pani-puris as well? Oh my!
I mean, pani-puri is the thing that I'll eat if I know that I'm going to die tomorrow.
Yes, me too.
I carried this whole packet of ready-to-fry puchkas. So a couple of times I took this big lot of fried pani-puris in a big box, and I'd taken potatoes, and chickpeas are readily available there, garbanzo. And so you mix the boiled potato and, put a whole lot of onions and stuff like that. And I had carried tamarind with me. So I made imli pani, and then I made the meetha chutney with jaggery, which I carried.
I am so proud of you. You have represented India amazingly well there. What a fabulous trailer for this episode, right? Imagine a pani puri party on a small little beach in Spain. Ingenious, no? Well, our guest in this episode is that and so much more. Today we have with us the second most famous Jonty in this world. We all know the first, and today we have the second most popular one. Jonty, who is also known as Jayanti, and not the other way around, is the founder of an amazing tour company called Detours India. Now, I got introduced to Jonty through a common friend who had told me that Jonty is the best storyteller and a real entertainer who will captivate me with all her travel stories and experiences. Well, now I can tell you that was a very mellow introduction, because Jonty is just awesome. You talk to her and she'll share stories about the breads of Uzbekistan, pastries of France, cricket matches that she went for in Sri Lanka, snorkeling in Hawaii, Bengali markets in Hyderabad, wines in Spain, and I can really go on and on. I honestly was a little starry-eyed when I first spoke to her because, come on, Jonty's touring list has the who's who from the world, from Ivanka Trump to Gary Mehigan from the MasterChef fame, and lots more. Her love for diving into the why and how of every aspect makes her story so much fun. And in today's episode, Jonty takes us on her trip to Spain, a trip she took up where she lived with a lovely local family in a small little village in Spain, a trip she wanted to do to get fluent in her spoken Spanish language, and in exchange, she taught the family there lots of vegetarian and vegan dishes because they had gone vegan. A trip that was actually a New Year's resolution that she made, and it came to life because of one of her friends that made it happen. A trip Jonty cherishes a lot. I absolutely enjoyed my conversation with Jonty. Lots of today I learned TIL kind of moments, fun anecdotes, bunch of historical trivia, food trivia, and great stories. And of course, since her company Detours India does a lot of walking and food tours in India and specifically in Hyderabad, we did talk a lot about her favorite Indian and Hyderabad specific details too. So I'm telling you, this episode is going to be so much fun. But as always, let's take a quick little break before we start on. Hey, do you know we read a travel themed newsletter every fortnight? Yep. And in each newsletter, we write about different destinations and travel experiences from around the world. In fact, you will get lots of details about this particular episode too in the upcoming newsletter. Head over to misadventuresofasneaker.substack.com. That's misadventuresofasneaker.substack.com. You will find the link in our show notes too. And by the way, if you enjoy listening to our podcast, you could support our team by buying us a coffee. Head on over to our show notes and click on support to contribute any amount you'd like. It will be a huge morale booster for us. Thank you. All right, let's now start detouring around España. So let me welcome you to the podcast. Should I call you Jonty or Jayanti through the entire?
Jonty, definitely, because Jayanti, only my family calls me that, and I always feel that I've done something wrong. So
Oh, when people call it the full name, when people do something wrong that way.
kind of like
Awesome. So welcome to the podcast, Jonty. I'm so thrilled to be talking to you. Tell me, so Jonty, what's the story behind it? Is it a cricket reference or you have any other story behind it?
No. I mean, it's probably the. I mean, yeah, I guess it is the cricket reference. It's a name that I got at XLRI actually. And within a week of starting the term, the first term, we had a batchmate called Deepak Gupta, who strangely lasted in Excel much less because he quit within a month and then he went off to the US to do his, MBA. And he was the one who was just sitting one day and just naming a lot of us. We were walking past through the gate and he kept saying, okay, what should I call you? What should I call you? And that was the time when the South African cricketer was, throwing himself around and becoming Superman and taking all these ridiculous catches and fielding. So Jonty was a name. Yeah, so his was a name that was pretty much around at that time. So he said, Jayanti. Okay, let's call you Jonty.
Oh, wow.
And it just stuck. And so a lot of my professors also in the first time, they were taken aback when they read out in the registered Jayanti during attendance, and the whole class would say, not Jayanti, Jonty. So then it just stuck. And then second term, there was a junior who came in. She was called Jayanti. So then they started calling her Junior Jonty.
And thus the legend continued?
That continued. And when I joined Titan, we had another person in the department who was called Jayanti. So then it just became automatically, it became convenient for everyone saying that, okay, she's Jayanti and she's Jonty. So yeah, and then it just stuck. I mean, by the time I left Titan, which was my first job after campus, I was, my letters, official letters regarding whatever transfers or whatever it was, started saying Jonty. So,
even emails were like, hi, Jonty or dear Jen.
Jonty at titan.co.in.
Look at that. Wow. So official naam hi badal gaya hai.
Kind of. In fact, I think when I was filling out some visa papers a few years ago, and they said, are you known by any other name? And I was like, of course, I have to fill up that column because everything public. And now since everything is gone online and social media, everything is Jonty. So, lots of people probably don't even know that my real name is Jayanti. So, so when I get invitations or if there are meeting requests from companies where, they need a official Aadhaar card or whatever to get inside a official government issued ID. So then I have to hastily write to them a couple of hours before the meeting. I hope the name you have given is Jayanti and not Jonty because, I've been refused entry because the name on the approved register will say Jonty and I'm actually Jayanti on my, IDs. So
this is so cool. So we have heard people getting nicknames and all that, but this is like nickname going like one step ahead of of the actual name itself. Yeah. Correct. So in my batch also, I got a nickname of Zuzu, and and that's now Zoos, and that was because at that time you had the Vodafone Zuzus, and the stories were that the Zuzus talk so much, most of it being, you don't understand, like kind.
I don't know you for too long, but yeah, I get the reference.
So and I had a batchmate called Revati as well on the batch. So she's Revati or Reva and I was Zeus. There are a lot of my friends who won't even remember if you say Revati, they'll think of my batchmate and not me because it's Zeus everywhere. So my social media handles also always have like a Rave_Zeus because family calls me Revati, whereas friends call me Zeus. But I've not gone to the extent of, getting invitation letters or, Zeus_ whatever at the official.
I guess it's because of the name Zeus, If it was slightly more formal or a proper name, then I guess you also might have got that.
But I like this story. And you are actually Jayanti Rajgopalan. So you're the JR with Jonty as well. You guys even share the
Yeah,
initials, right?
exactly. The same
See?
initials. Yeah.
So there is a cricket reference. I've heard that you were a cricket fan, so I was wondering
Yeah,
whether
big
there
fan.
is a cricket reference, direct or indirect, but
Yeah,
there
but
is one.
it's indirect. Yeah. So
Very cool. So cricket, you are a cricket fan, I've heard. Or
yeah,
this
yeah.
is
Huge sports fan, I'll say. So, tennis, cricket, football. Like at some point of time in life, I thought I'm going to become a sports journalist. Many, seems like a lifetime ago. But that was the plan.
फिर plan कैसे change हो गया?
Oh God, I don't even know. I just got into the state where I was not sure what I wanted to do. So then I said, let me decide on what I don't want to do, and then knocked off a few things, obvious things like getting out of college and doing your IAS and engineering and medical anyway was nowhere on my list of things to do. And after graduation, a lot of my batchmates went on to do MA and then went on to do PhD and then became lifelong students at JNU or became professors and stuff like that. And I was like, whatever I do next, I need a job immediately after that. And therefore, I decided that at that time, MBA seemed to be the most, thing which everyone did and then got a job. So I was like, okay, 2 more years I can study. I was not a big fan of the education system. I didn't like the exams. I didn't like the fact that I had to attend classes and stuff like that. So, yeah, so that worked out for me. And that's where I met, I think we share a common friend, Ashok Nair.
Yep.
So
Our
he was my
superstar he
senior
is, like amazing. We get such, even now I in fact sent him a message yesterday that we got from one of our fans about the episode being so amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, and for our listeners, Ashok is a wildlife photographer and he was the guest on one of our most popular episodes on this channel called Snapshots from the Wild. I'll link the episode on our show notes. What a
Yeah.
storyteller, man.
I
Awesome.
know. Yeah. So we continue to stay in touch, thankfully. So he's one of the few people from my senior batch who I stay in touch with. So yeah.
Fun, very fun person, very fun person. So sports journalism on the whole. So this was what you were thinking even before you did your graduation and all that, right?
Yeah. Much before. So
But
I
love
was
for
very
sports
careful.
even stays.
Yeah, that definitely stays. Our family is a little sports obsessed. So
Hmm.
I've grown up, with those days we used to have transistors and I would be given the transistor, even when I was barely able to understand the intricacies of the game, my brother and uncles and dad and all would hand over the transistor and say, just keep telling us the score because they would be busy playing cricket. And, so my job was to listen to the commentary and then go and tell them if a wicket has fallen or somebody has, done something of note. So yeah, I think as a family, we've been more focused on sports. All of us, pretty much, all of us were obsessed with sports. I took to swimming at a young age, so I, became a national level swimmer. I didn't do too well at the national levels, but yeah, spent a lot of my time in the swimming pool, and so
Hmm.
sports came very naturally to me. So it just seemed like the best thing to do, like write about something that you love. So what can be wrong about it?
I know.
But
Hey, well, you
but
continue doing that even now, by the way, yeah? Hmm.
yeah, I do definitely. But yeah, the sports journalism thing for some reason kind of just fell out of favor in my head, and so then I said, okay, let me do the next thing that sounds the least troublesome.
Troublesome.
Yeah, correct. Because generally studying anything seemed to be like a big pain to me. So I'd rather be on the sports field. So
You're more of an outdoorsy person.
I guess I used to be when I was much
Hmm.
younger. Now I'm pretty much a homebody. I love watching sports, and therefore being at home is a luxury. And because my job now is such that I'm out most of the time when there's a tour
Yeah.
on, just coming back home is a big relief, and you just feel like, okay, this is my space. And when you get, like Nair said, older, wiser, you realize the joys of being at home in a safe space and eating
Hmm.
simple food and stuff like that.
You have actually a good mix of both. You do get
I do.
work takes you to a lot of places outdoors where you see new people, you see new things, meet new people, and then you
Yeah,
can at some point come back to your
correct.
comfort space at it's a
Yeah.
nice combination. So
Yes.
maybe last few years, have you done any kind of sports specific vacations, like for going to watch a Wimbledon or a World Cup or, one of those things?
Yeah, I've gone for a few cricket matches,
Mm.
especially when I'm traveling somewhere and if there's a tour going on, I definitely do that. Ashok did not tell you this, but yeah, this is like a sore point between him and me. We were supposed to go and watch the 2007 Cricket World Cup in West Indies. He had sworn that he would come with me, and I still blame him for canceling that. And he had a very silly reason. He got his wife pregnant. So yeah, I
Oh,
don't know
who
why
does
that.
such things?
Exactly. And I don't know why that becomes more important than the World Cup. I just don't get it.
Yeah, you're like, अरे team को जिताना पड़ता है, right? You've got to go and do that.
But, I tend to not talk much about that World Cup because that's the one where we got knocked out in the first round in West
Yeah,
Indies. So
very sad, man.
instead of going to West Indies, I returned back from the US. So it just was one of those nightmare series where I had tickets for the matches, which I thought would be like India versus Pakistan. And then I realized they're like Ireland versus Bangladesh or something
Aya.
like so lost a lot of money, but more than that, it was one of the most depressing
Massive
series for
disappointment.
India. Yeah, yeah, massive. So then came back to India and then probably realized that what Nair did was more sensible.
Okay,
Yeah,
learnings for a lot of people here, huh? But then cricket के अलावा football भी है तो वो भी देखना पड़ेगा. And then you have tennis also. Come on.
yeah, correct. So my dream, like if I earn enough money in this lifetime, my dream is to watch all the four Grand Slams in the same year. Just go and do Australian Open and then French and then Wimbledon and then the US Open.
How
So
lovely that
that
would be.
that would be like absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Don't know whether I'll ever get to that stage, but if I have enough money, that's what I'll do. So
100%.
then after that, I did go to Sri Lanka to watch the World Cup, T20 World Cup. This was in 2009, I think. So yeah, so I have done a few won't say sports related, sports specific thing all the time, but yes, whenever I do travel, I definitely try and see if I can catch a match and kind of soak up the atmosphere of a live match.
It's so fun. The it's electric, right? To be there.
Yeah,
It's like very high energy. Maza aata hai. Which are the
absolutely.
most interesting or prettiest stadiums, or not necessarily prettiest, the most fun that you've had being a part of
I
a
think,
sport thing?
well, I'll answer both. The prettiest stadium is definitely Dharamshala.
Oh, I love it
Um,
actually. Me too. Even one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, so when I did like this crazy long break once, I went off and stayed in McLeodganj for a couple of months, and then at that time, I one day I went to Dharamshala because I just heard about the stadium, and I was like, okay, it's a cricket stadium. How beautiful can it be? And there were no matches going on, but I just walked in, and at that time it was not as popular as it is now because I'm talking about 2000. I want to say yeah, 2005. And I just walked into the stadium and I was like completely blown away by the beauty of the stadium. But never got a chance to watch a match there. But the most electric atmosphere, I would definitely, what I've experienced is the India versus Pakistan match, T20 during the World Cup in 2009, where we were in Sri Lanka. I was there with a couple of other friends. And oh my God, when the national
Oh
anthem
my
plays, and
God.
it's
I think
just
wherever you watched India Pakistan, you'll just lose it. Oh my God.
exactly. So that's the only live India Pakistan match that I've watched, completely surrounded. And because it was Sri Lanka, there were a lot of Pakistanis attending the matches as well. And then you realize the joy that we're pretty much the same people, right? And so you
Yes.
get this huge sense of satisfaction where it's like being competitive with friends who you otherwise get along. So at the stadium, while everyone is cheering for their own teams, there's a lot of passing around of snacks, and the language is the same. So
Correct.
know, end up making fun of each other in the same language, and everyone is shocked that people can get along with each other so well. So,
Yeah, you can't even make it a difference kaun hai, right?
correct.
It's so
Right.
nice. What a lovely feeling. So I
Yeah.
went for the first IPL in Dharamshala, first one that happened. During B school, we had an NGO project that we have to take up and do for about 6 weeks or so. And my NGO project was in Dharamshala. a little off Dharamshala actually. So we were working with Nabard over there. So one of the weekends was this IPL that was happening there. It was so beautiful. And it's a very small ground. So you can see every player almost up close and personal. And it was a Chennai versus Punjab, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was the one where Dhoni came back and hit a few. I think that was I don't remember, but there was
I don't remember that well.
Match. Okay.
Maybe. I don't remember that well, but I think it was Chennai versus Punjab, and 95% folks there were supporting Punjab. Just for the sake of it, we supported Chennai. I mean, I don't have any, I just for the sake of it. It was so much fun. Like, we will scream when Chennai does it, they will scream back, they look at us. And so we were almost like a big group, and we were targeted like that. It was great fun. It's a very beautiful stadium, and surrounding the mountains around that, gorgeous. Very pretty. Yeah. So I'll definitely say that. I really like Eden Gardens as well. It's a very nice stadium. Yeah.
I did watch a match there, India versus England. I had a knee problem, so I was a little worried while getting out in the crowd. I thought I'm going to trip and fall. So, and India was doing quite badly. There was this guy called Marcus Trescothick, and he was hitting, and it seemed like they're going to win very easily. So when there was still about, I think, 15, 20 overs left, I just decided to leave, because then everything would become simpler if I leave when there's no crowd. And so I left, and this was again the days when you couldn't check the scores on your phone and stuff like that. So got into a cab, got dropped home, and then went and switched on the television, and we were close to winning. So,
oh man.
I like, damn, I should have been there.
It's like the match the finals that we just had, right? Everyone had thought we had lost, right? I mean, my folks had left, they'd gone out to sleep. But I'm like, next day, the way I danced around them, now you guys slept off. Look what happened.
I know, incredible. A lot of my friends told me the same story, and I was like, how can you sleep? For me, it's unthinkable that you can sleep without the end. So
and I would have cried in my sleep also, thinking, oh, we were losing. And we can always get the phone notifications, right? Correct. My phone was all groups buzzing. Oh my God, who took a six? Oh my God, so fun. Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. Very sad for the India-England experience that you had.
I know, but I was still, the bigger disappointment was I was actually traveling, and I used to be based out of Calcutta at that time, and I was traveling during the test match that, the famous 281 of Lakshman and Dravid, the follow-on test match.
Oh, wow.
I was scheduled to travel on the last day, on the 5th day. And I was taking one of these local trains to Asansol. I used to be in sales at that time. So I took a cab from the office to go to the railway station. And again, those days you didn't have notifications and Cricinfo scores on your phone. And while I was crossing, I heard the cheer from Eden Gardens. I crossed Eden Gardens and I knew something had happened. And later on, of course, I figured out that Harbhajan Singh had taken a wicket. Then I got onto the train, and those days used to SMS a number. I think some.
I remember that. Yeah.
Or you had to write and send it to 5. And then so I kept doing that every 10 minutes. And then finally, when I think when the train was leaving the station, Harbhajan or somebody took the last wicket, and then we won. So that was So I would have rather seen that match at Eden Gardens than. I don't really miss the Trescothick match. I managed to see India batting, so that was fine.
That was good. Yeah. Those I remember those Vodafone advertisements, and we were just talking zoos. They also had the get cricket updates, send this message, and then those will come kind of stuff. Yeah. Awesome, man. Awesome. You have lots of stories about, sporting events and all that.
Absolutely.
So I have read people calling you a food historian.
Yeah.
What is the story of being a food historian?
I guess I've always been very fascinated by why we eat what we eat. So, rather than just look at the food and say, oh, okay, this dish is tasty. And then, so my mind will always go, and why? Why do they have aloo papad in Banaras and not in any other place? And, so slowly over a period of time, I think I started developing a love for the history behind the food. And started doing a lot of research and speaking to people and reading books and trying to figure out exactly why certain things come onto the plates in certain areas. And so I guess that's what a historian does.
So exploring foods around a lot of places is something you super enjoy?
Yeah. That's kind of my thing.
Oh.
So all my tours, all my travels when I go outside of Hyderabad or even within Hyderabad, it'll all be planned around food stops. Okay, we have to have lunch there, and therefore we have to do that thing first, and then we have to. So a lot of us as travelers end up being food lovers as well, and especially street food and chaat. And we're going, no, that shop opens only at 4 in the evening, so we can't go to that part of town at that time of the day. So yeah,
Big element of
all
touring, yes.
decisions around food. So yeah, so that's what fascinates me. And in a country like India, which is so complex with its history and
Yeah.
geography and culture and people and religion, there's so much of all that which influences the food of a region.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that fascinates me to a huge extent. And that's why I think that's a label I wear very happily, saying, yes, of course, I want to know why we eat what we eat.
It's
So
fascinating, yeah. Yeah. So actually, during through all my recordings that I've done so far, there have been so many stories that have actually come out. How did charts, the idea of charts, first come into picture? The whole idea of why itna meetha chutney, itna tikha chutney. How did that whole thing come into picture?
Mhm.
So many things. Again, the episode that we did on Hyderabad, the guy actually took us on an entire tour of Hyderabad basis. Kaun si biryani, what time you have to stand in the queue to start. Having that. He said, no, it opens at 2 o'clock, but we start
Yeah.
at 11:30, which means you
Yeah.
have to finish something before that. And there is this dosa place which is open at 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. or something in the morning, so you have to go there. So
Yeah.
actually, if you're actually touring a place, you have to time it basis your which stall opens when and which chota dukan opens when and all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, a lot of fun, lot of fun. Okay, so for our listeners, Jonty has founded this particular very interesting tour. Would I call it a tour experience?
Your company is fine.
Company is fine. Called Detours. Now, I really like, so I've also been asked about how we named our podcast Misadventures of a Sneaker. There's a story behind it and how we did it and all of that. But I really like the name Detours because it's something that when you don't follow a specific day one, day two, day three kind of itinerary, go through the lanes and bylanes, that's where sabse zyada masti comes, sabse zyada stories come.
Yeah.
You meet the locals, you see the colors, you see the food. They have the actual unique local stories and all that. And I'm talking about when you named this, it was about 15 years back or so.
Yeah, 15 years ago.
Right?
Little more than 15 years. We are in our 16th year. Later this year, we'll complete 16 years. So,
Arre
yeah,
wah.
the naming thing started a little before that. And I have a very dear friend in my ex-company, Titan, called Arun. And he is the guy who is the one with the creative names and stuff like that. So I called up Arun and I said, I need a name for my company. And he knew all about my, what my plan was and what kind of company I was planning to create. And so then he kept sending me names, and again, it was SMS and not WhatsApp. So, I would look at the SMS and then I'd be like, okay, maybe. And then suddenly one day he sent a name saying Detours. And then I immediately wrote back to him. I still remember, I said, this is it. Okay. And then
The thing happened.
the thing
Beautiful.
happened. And then I was like, ooh, super. And I tried to look for detours.com online and I couldn't find it. Then I ended up getting detoursindia.com. So I registered that and I was feeling very super proud of myself that, okay, I've come up with a super unique name. And then I did a Google search on Detours much later. There are half a dozen or more than a dozen companies across the world, which are all travel companies.
Oh, God.
And within India also, there was one called Detours, which was mostly into what we call MICE, which is conferences and conventions and
Oh, okay.
and incentives and stuff. So I kept getting phone calls because I had a phone number online and people would look for Detours, see my phone number and then say, can we speak to so and so? And I'd be like, no, that no one exists. And then it took me a while to figure out why the problems were happening. So yes, I mean, to me it was unique. Not
It's
as
very beautiful.
adventures, because I don't think there's anybody in the world who calls their podcast that. But yeah, there are a few companies called Detours across the world. But yeah, we are the only Detours India. So that's how the name came about. So Arun, hats off to you. The name still evokes a lot of praises. So
Yeah,
thanks.
it's really very nice. And then when I see the work that you do and the name, it's a perfect alignment between that.
Correct.
So the
Correct.
idea with which you started it, is it something that you are continuing? Is it the similar On the same lines, over 15 years, that's quite cool, yeah?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so I think my biggest high was on the 10th anniversary where I was like, I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, I've done it. So even now, if tomorrow I'm forced to shut down the company and, call it quits, I'm happy that I ran it for 10 years. Yes, we still continue to focus on off the beaten track. We still continue to focus on places where the history is not very well known. And there are a lot of places like this in Hyderabad. So I'm actually quite grateful to the city that it has still kept a lot of its treasures
Yeah.
kind of hidden. So we still manage to get a lot of things from the city for a client, and that makes it interesting. That also keeps us on our toes because we're constantly trying to discover new stuff about the city. And yeah, we definitely do a lot of the regular tours as well, because anybody who comes to Hyderabad definitely wants to do the usual historic places at least. But we do get clients who say we want to go to places where there's not a single other tourist, and we're like, yes, you're our kind of a client. And then we take them to these not just monuments but people's homes and all the narrow by lanes, artisans homes, etc., where you don't see other clients. And that's the perfect tour for me, where you're going off the beaten track. And the whole idea of detours also was based on this, that our focus is, I jokingly call India's tourism sector very monumental, because it is around monument.
Nice pun.
Yeah, and it's all around, who built it and how tall it is and how wide it is and what material. And and then you just leave the monument and you've forgotten all about it. But what you remember is sitting and chatting with some local who shared something with you, or you remember going to people's homes and having a fantastic meal, or going to a market and discovering things which are a little unusual. So I think those are the things that we focus on more those kind of experiences rather than just the monuments. So yeah, the idea was born out of that. Idea was born out of a similar experience that I had, which was there somewhere at the back of my mind when I was visiting Nepal many years ago, and this was in the 90s. And I was staying with a friend of a friend, and we were in this little place called Bhaktapur, which is known for its temples and stuff like that. So because we were staying with locals, he took us out in the middle of, I think it must have been around 10:30, 11, definitely after dinner. And then we walked up this steep steps on top of a temple, and you kind of look down on this square, temple square, and you can also see the rest of the part of the city. And he started telling us the story about the temple and who built it and what that king went through, and how one day he lost a battle and he was in the outskirts of the city looking at the temple, and then he sang a song, and so goosebumps kind of experience. And I was like, this is what people need to do. They don't need to go and do this tourist trail and get in and off buses. And so I think that idea remained somewhere in my head. And then on a visit to London in 2000, I want to say 6 or 7 or something like that, I was at King's Cross Station, and I saw this, the thing that they wedge a luggage cart between whatever the platform where Hogwarts
Yes.
right? So they have this, they basically cut off a luggage cart and put it into the wall, but it seems like the luggage cart is going
through.
And lots of people were standing in front of it and taking pictures. And I was like, my God, like Harry Potter is like yesterday, 5, 10, whatever years ago. And look at them creating such a brilliant experience out of it. And the fact that they can do something so big with something so little. And here we are sitting in a country like India, where we have so much more, in terms of our history and culture, and how we don't get people to experience that as much as we go and show them the monuments and the temples and forts, and which are all great, which are all a part of the history. But there is a sense of boredom that happens after the third fort and the fourth fort, and you're like, okay, fine. Some of the foreign tourists call it templitis, where you get templitis because you've seen one too many temples.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
Yeah, and then you stop seeing things after that. So it was born out of that. And initial plan was to just do food tours, but in 2004 and 5, when I was actually planning it, putting it together, food tours were nowhere close to being as important as they are today. And it just became a bit of a challenge to think that I would be successful doing only food tours across the country. And therefore, had a long chat with one of my ex-bosses from Titan, and Jacob, he said that you need to maybe think of expanding a little bit, not in terms of the area, like focus on Hyderabad and do more of thing. Anyway, because you're talking about the connections between food and culture and history, you are doing research and all that.
Yeah.
So why don't you just offer the city to the traveler rather than offer just the food of the city and food of other cities, which will also become a little challenging given that you're an entrepreneur for the first time. So the amount of money that goes into research of other cities, you may not have to do. It might be easier to do it sitting in Hyderabad, just focusing on Hyderabad. And brilliant advice, because that's what we then did. Just put up, tours around, in and around Hyderabad. And got lucky because around the same time, around a few years later, about 4 years later, Falaknuma Palace reopened to the public as a hotel. There was a lot of publicity around that. So a lot of the travel agents from other parts of the world used to visit. We almost kind of rode on the success of Falaknuma Palace. And that helped us get a lot of the high-end clients who used to come for leisure. Otherwise, for the first about 4 years, 5 years, still the Falaknuma Palace opened, we used to focus on the business traveler who used to come to Hyderabad. Thanks again to the high-tech city and, the success of the high-tech city story and the Cyberabad, birth of Cyberabad. And a lot of the clients would come in spending a week or a month or whatever in Hyderabad, and then they had time to do a few tours with us. So that's where our main clientele came from before Falaknuma opened. And after Falaknuma opened, it became both the business traveler when the season's a little, when it's the regular year, and then October to March, we get a lot of clients coming in who are here for leisure, who are here to actually travel and to see the country. So Hyderabad becomes a part of their longer itinerary.
Yeah. What a city, man. What a city. So I have worked in Hyderabad for a couple of years as well. But most of my touring Hyderabad happened when as a child, I used to come to visit my cousins there, and they used to wait for us to come to Hyderabad. Oh, you're coming, so we'll go here. Oh, you're coming, so we'll go there. So most of it was then. When I was at work, barely, it just, you go through the rut of things and you barely do anything. I kick myself so much now that I haven't seen so many things in Hyderabad.
And it always happens in the place that you live in. You always feel you have time, or you don't give it as much importance because life.
Lousy. So Hyderabad will happen. A nice tour of Hyderabad will happen soon, and I'll definitely get in touch with you. But Jonty, I will ask about Hyderabad and your favorite places there, probably towards the end of our podcast conversation, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's start. I mean, otherwise I can just keep going on and on and on and on about all alag things that you've experienced. So, when I was talking to Jonty, when we first started thinking about, this podcast and, what can we talk about? Of course, her first, idea was talking about Hyderabad and talking about different aspects or different places in India that, hidden kind of places, like how she's mentioned so many different ones. But the second option she gave was a very interesting one, where she stayed for a few weeks in Spain. And this was not as a tourist, but staying with a local and living their life, which I thought was very unique, because not everyone gets. People do couch surfing, but that's again a very touristy thing. One does not really go and live the life of a local with a local. So, learning their food, learning their mannerisms, getting to know, their culture, what they do, even small things like that. So I found it very, very interesting. So I said, Hashlo, let's do the Spain wala thing. So let's talk about your story about the Spain wala stay. And if I'm not mistaken, this started with your fascination to learn Spanish, right?
Yes, so it was more of a fascination to learn a foreign language.
Okay.
And I pick up languages quite easily, so I thought, why not learn a foreign language as well? But not as easy as it seems when you learn it as a formal language, because then you learn it in a proper manner with grammar and stuff like that. So it's like going back to school, which I always did. But yes, so I got the opportunity during the pandemic where, running a tour company, we were pretty jobless for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And
Must have been
I
harsh
felt that my mind was rotting inside. I realized that there was nothing happening up there. So I would wake up in the morning and not have an agenda. So I said, okay, I need some kind of discipline in my life, and I've always said that I wanted to learn a foreign language. So why not now? And most of the foreign language courses had moved online. So
Yep.
I was like, okay, let me do a virtual online class. And then I signed up for Spanish. Well, the main reason was because I always thought I learned French, but the French language course was super expensive. So, and given that there was no income coming in, I was like, okay, I'm going to learn Spanish because it's a cheaper course.
I
And
like it.
anyway, so started it and just got super fascinated by it. Liked the fact that it had given me a sense of purpose, and I would get up every morning, and I worked really hard. I don't think I worked as hard when I was in school. I would have done much better academically if I had done
Yeah,
this. But
such
yes, I
things.
would wake up and read online Spanish newspapers, practice, and learn new words, at least
Oh,
five
very
new
first
words
venture,
every
very
day.
first
Yeah, yeah,
venture.
very like those first venture, like horrible the people who I used to look at and kind of
And
smirk
judge.
saying I'm not. So I did all that, and so I learned Spanish. I mean, I passed all the exams and did all the levels and whatever, but I realized that I'm not able to speak as comfortably because you're not surrounded by the language. So when I lived in different cities, I just pick up the language because you hear it constantly.
Yeah.
And there's no way you'll hear it constantly sitting in a city like Hyderabad. So, and I had a friend from UK who was visiting me. And she was also visiting India after many years. So we were having this it was around December. So that's the time when all of us get very, for a very short period, we get very philosophical and say,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
New Year resolutions and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. True.
So that's what happened to us. And so she said, what is it that you'd like to do next year? And then I said, my dream is to go and live in Spain for like 2 or 3 months and live in a small town or a village and be forced to speak Spanish. And I feel that that's what will help me improve my language. And so Penny, my friend, she was my ex-colleague she's an ex-colleague from the Gates Foundation. So Penny is like one of those like, okay, right, let's make this happen.
You need
And
such
she
people.
immediately pulled out her laptop and she started sending emails out. And I was like, what? I just said it, And she's like, no, we'll make it happen. And she wrote to a half a dozen of her friends who had some Spanish connection. And surely a week later, I get a message from her saying someone's going to contact you. And I got a mail from this guy called Serge from Spain. And he's like, I live here with my partner and 3 kids, and we'd be happy to have you here. And I was like, what?
Wow.
Now it's all like real. Okay. So then I was like, okay, let me look at my bank balance. And because it's an expensive proposition, and coming out of a 2.5 year
pandemic, yeah,
was not easy. But coming out of a 2.5 year slump was also, you just like, to hell with everything else.
Yeah.
Let me just do this.
Yeah, it was everyone was in YOLO form. Okay, you live only
Everyone
once.
was,
Let's
yeah,
do everything.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I got into that mode. I was like, okay, if I live, if I survive, I'm sure there'll be a way that I'll figure out to make money. I'm not going to look at the bank balance bit of it. We just look at other logistics. So then, I quickly contacted the family, and they are actually an English family living in Spain, and they've been living there ever since, for the past many years. And Penny kind of told her friends, her Spanish connected friends, that I'm, in exchange for living with them, I'll give them gyan on Indian food, and, that I'm one of these big experts and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
nice.
oversold, but it worked. And this family had turned vegan a few years before, and they were like, two things. One, they wanted to learn more in Indian food, Indian recipes, and they also wanted their kids to be exposed to a different culture through people. And they were
Lovely.
quite, so yeah, now I consider Serge, Anya, and their kids as my Spanish families, so my family in Spain. So we just hit it off immediately, had a couple of conference calls, and then we just decided on the logistics. And, 3-4 months later, during the summer when didn't have much to do, I packed my bags and went to Spain. So stayed.
Oh my God, beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful story.
Correct. So eventually I ended up staying for about 6 weeks. So roughly about a month with families, and then a couple of weeks traveling around. So most amazing experience. Yeah, so that's how it
Yeah.
all came about.
So this is one of the resolutions that actually,
Actually
fructified.
panned out and worked out.
So ho sakta hai, we should not give up on the resolution and still keep doing
Yes,
it.
I know.
I hope to find friends like Penny,
Correct,
around at
correct.
that
Yeah.
point.
Everyone
Only
should have
then.
a penny in their lives.
Yeah, everyone should. Yeah, really, honestly. Very nice. So, Spain is one of those countries which is like Guinness Book of World Records in ham, right? You barely can find. I mean, if I find Spanish, I'm a vegetarian, so Spanish vegetarian dishes, kuch bhi nahi aayega, olives.
Very
Just
few,
eat
yeah.
olives.
Correct.
So in the middle of all this, the family, Saj's family wanted to, were turning vegan. It must have been quite a struggle for them. How was it for you in terms of food when you were there?
So to a large extent, because I was staying with families and teaching them Indian dishes, of course, I carried about 12 kilos of spices with me. So it was not too bad when I was living with the family, because you were cooking. I was cooking Indian food and teaching them various different methods, breads and stuff like that. So I would eat that. So I guess I ate Indian food when I was cooking Indian food. The problem was obviously while traveling, and one of the tours that I did, again, while you're doing tours, you have this aha moment as to why, because you mentioned the Iberian ham. Immediately you're like, okay, why is pork so popular in Spain? And then you realize that there is a story behind it, like always. And so, when the whole Inquisition was happening and people were trying to weed out the Muslims and the Jews out of the community, those who
Right?
were pretending to be not that. One of the ways in which you would immediately prove to people that you're not, you don't, you're not Jewish or Muslim, is by hanging a big part of the ham or whatever. So the hanging it out of your house, and if you're Jew, you don't. It's not kosher, right? So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
eat pork. So if it is hanging outside your door, you're definitely not. So people wouldn't even come to bother you. And because of the sun in the south of Spain, the ham would get cured very, very well,
Oh
and
my God.
that's why the Iberian ham is
Oh
like
my
so.
God. What a horrible reason, but
Correct. But the same holds true for a lot of these Catholic countries. So you look at Spain, you look at Portugal, you look at Philippines for that matter. A lot of countries that eat pork is largely because the people who wanted to prove that you are a Christian and you're a Catholic, you need to eat pork. And therefore eating pork, serving pork in royal banquets to make sure that everyone's eating, and therefore they are the the true Christians. That became one of the popular dishes.
fascinating, man. Please throw a lot of these facts, beach me. Okay, I love it. It's
Yeah,
so, these things are like one ting, one moment. Oh, yeah,
correct.
that's true, man. How come we did not, put 1 + 1 and think this is how it is? Oh, so that's why the whole
Yeah.
Guinness Book thing and all of it. My God,
Yeah.
I was wondering Guinness Book for ham. I've never even knew the Guinness Book. Weird records also come up, right?
Correct. So you go into a supermarket in Spain, and
Hmm.
like we have a whole section of vegetables. Or
Hmm.
you go to one of these typical vegetable markets, and you see rows and rows and rows and rows of vegetable shops. There's a whole section which is dedicated to ham. So you can just walk through like corridors of ham before you reach a section where you can even pick up a food. So as a vegetarian, when I was out of the home,
Hmm.
I found it quite challenging, very
Hmm.
frankly. So you go to restaurants, they don't understand the concept of being vegetarian. They're like, okay, what do I offer you? So the
Hmm.
thing that I used to survive on was the popular breakfast there, which is tostada con tomates or aguacate, which is basically avocado. So either
Okay,
avocado or tomatoes on top of a toast,
a toast.
and huge quantities of olive oil. So they give you olive oil the way they give you the green chili sauce and the tomato ketchup in India, which is really great
Oh,
for us, right? Because we just go like Indian. Oh my
yeah.
God, olive oil! This is
I
so
know, I know.
expensive. So let me just
Let's be extra, yes.
drench the tostada. So yeah, so I pretty much survived on that. And then when I was doing these Airbnb stays during my travels, um, I were in places where I was allowed to use the kitchen. Ended up finding my way around. So there's this really nice, what they call supermercado, called Mercadona in Spain. And so it's like a supermarket like many of the local ones, but filled with a lot of produce. So from breads to meats to, pretty much everything you get there. So there I figured out the sections where I could go. And so there was this you get these Tetra Pak, like your fruity packets. You get something called pisto, which is the equivalent of ratatouille in French.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically a tomato sauce which has got lots of vegetables in it. And salmorejo, which is a cold soup. Also, gazpacho. So you had bottles of gazpacho, like how we have bottles of buttermilk, they have bottles of gazpacho in supermarkets. And they did have enough greens. So, all your salad greens. They had bread. I won't, really think that no one should go to Spain looking for great bread. But apart from that,
Very sad, man. Europe is equal to good breads, man. I love breads of Europe. Oh God, I look forward to my different breakfast. आज ये वाला bread खाएंगे, वो वाला bread खाएंगे kinds.
Correct. So when I was in France many years before, so I don't speak a word of French, so I would just go to a to a boulangerie or whatever, to a bakery, and then just point out things like that, and then just get it and eat it, and everything I ate would be brilliant. But yes, Spain does not have the greatest bread.
Disappointing.
Yeah, very disappointing. But they definitely had enough in the supermarket for me to be, kind of, I worked out that, okay, I could mix this and put some chili flakes. And, they have a very nice smoked paprika, which I always used to carry a tin of. And so you put smoked paprika in pesto, and then you throw in a little bit of pasta or something like that. And it would be close to whatever you're used to eating, or something that gratifies your hunger. And then, you always have, if you don't mind spending, there are now in very touristy places, there are enough vegan restaurants which you can go to.
That's right. Yeah.
And order food. But I had sworn that I would not pay money and eat Indian food. So
I am of that kind of.
Yeah, but I had to do it. Twice I had to do it because I just didn't have any other option. So,
nice. Yes, Spain is also known for its peppers and tomatoes and all that. No, variety of peppers, different kinds.
Absolutely. So the vegetable, talking about vegetables, those who know Spain, the southern part of Spain, probably don't know that they have these huge number of what they call plasticos, which are greenhouses, which are made with plastic. So they're quite, I have to use the word ugly, because you have fields of plasticos all over. So when you're traveling by train or bus or whatever, you see so many plasticos in that area. And otherwise, that area has a lot of these rocks, and they look like a lot of Western movies get shot there.
Yeah. So all the good, bad, and the ugly and exactly. All. It's all been in Andalusia, right? Yeah.
Correct. Imagine that scenario. And with a few windmills like your Don Quixote and, Quixote, sorry. And then you have, in the middle of all this, you have a whole lot of plasticos. And these are essentially places where they grow huge quantities of vegetables. And the southern Spain caters to the rest of Europe. And so you have the most amazing tomatoes, you have the most amazing zucchinis, you have capsicums, and you have watermelons. So a whole lot of things which are grown in these plasticos then get exported to the rest of Europe.
Wow, and very cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's a desert area, actually. No, all those Western movies and all, everything is just desert. You'll have one cactus, one massive 100 feet tall cactus looking thing, and it's rocks and stones everywhere.
Yeah. So they discovered a way of getting water and irrigation system they figured out, and therefore it's a large part of the economy actually is dependent on these plasticos. And so buying vegetables in the market was not difficult, especially the local markets. A lot of it gets exported. So it's like buying apus in India. You pay for it because, otherwise they get a better price with in order to export it. But essentially, buying vegetables and the kind of tomatoes you get, there are some tomatoes you just eat like apples. You just pick it up and eat it. And this was not even the peak summer, which is when it's supposed to be at its best. So I left when summer was just kind of, they just about started, the season had just started, the summer had just started. So I came back by then. But yeah, amazing vegetables, which are great, especially if you're
Oh,
trying to cook at home.
nice. So tell me, how did you do your planning for number of days here, number of days there? How do you do the whole thing?
So Serge, Anya, they were comfortable with me staying, and they'd also spoken to a few neighbors of theirs, and they also hosted me. And then it was a pretty comfortable thing. I just went there, and first couple of weeks I was just walking around the town and
Which
just.
town is this?
This is a small little town in the Andalusian region called San Jose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful town because it's like a very, very small town on the sea.
Oh,
Kind of by the sea. So, beach every day. You just walk around, have these lovely walks. So you have the desert on one side and you have the sea on the other. Parts of it will remind you of the book Don Quixote. And so you have these big windmills and abandoned windmills, etc.
oh man.
Yeah, but I would just spend my days walking and then, of course, cooking with the family and then neighbors, go on walks with people. There was a particular neighbor who was from Chile and she wanted to learn English. So she spoke very little English. I spoke passable Spanish, I would say. So we forced ourselves to have walks about an hour and a half every morning, then go sit around in a cafe, eat breakfast. And then eventually a plan worked out. I knew what are the cities I needed to see. I always wanted to see Granada because everyone sees the Golconda Fort and says, "Oh, it reminds me of the Alhambra."
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So they say that, and then so I was like very curious. I was like, okay, let's see what this town is all about. And then other things that I read about, I definitely wanted to do Cordoba. I wanted to do Sevilla, and ended up making an unscheduled stop to a small town which actually had been not very far from Madrid, which had been the one of the original capitals of Spain, which was called Valladolid. And Valladolid, because I got a message from someone I knew in Spain who I was trying to meet up in Madrid, saying that the Jaipur Literature Festival is going to be in Valladolid for the first time.
And it's called the Jaipur Literature Festival there as well.
Yes, it's called Jaipur
What?
Festival. So yes, the Jaipur Literature Festival has gone to other countries, right? So you've seen it in UK and in America. They do it in a couple of locations. So this is the first time they were taking their festival to Spain, and this is the first time they were taking it to a non-English speaking country.
How cool is
So
that?
yeah, and I never get to attend the JLF here because it's always during the middle of the tourist season, and I never can get away at that time. So I was like, oh, this is weird. I'm going to attend the Jaipur Literature Festival in Spain. So yeah, so I planned that, and of course, the aim was always to end at Barcelona because I had my flight out of there. So I had a rough plan in mind of the start and the end dates, and everything in between I put after getting inputs on how to do this travel from place to place. And I discovered, I believe it's in India as well, which I was not aware when I went to Spain. Have you heard of BlaBlaCars?
I have heard of BlaBlaCar.
Yeah.
It's the carpooling thing, right?
Correct.
Ah, yeah,
Kind
I
of
have heard
ride
of it. Yeah,
sharing
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a thing. So,
Mhm.
so BlaBlaCars are very, very popular in Spain, and it worked out brilliantly for me because I could, force myself to speak Spanish. So I would
Yeah.
sit in cars with strangers and do these long 3-4 hour drives from town to town and speak in Spanish. So yeah,
It's
so I
so
discovered.
wonderful. You get to know so many things when you're like captive, right? You all have to talk to each other. You don't have any other go. Like
Correct,
in a train, you don't need not talk to your co-passenger. Same thing in a bus or a flight. But in
correct,
a car, you have to. It's a small confined space. Very
correct.
nice, yeah.
So yeah, did that. I think my favorite, yes, definitely Alhambra was very, very, was really brilliant. And what I discovered, while I was in southern Spain, and probably the ignorant me who had not done enough research about history of Spain, I just knew that yes, there was some Moorish influence, but didn't know anything beyond that. But Spain is a very, very deeply, Muslim culture, similar to what India has, similar to places like Hyderabad. So the Moors ruled in Spain for several hundred years.
I really had I had no idea about this. Okay, so I recorded an episode on Peru, which is going to release before your episode releases. And the guest in that episode actually mentioned how Peru has a strong Arabic influence because of the Spanish coming to Latin America, and there are dishes which still have Arabic names.
Yeah,
And he said, and that's when I was like, oh, Arabic influence, why? And then I
huge.
went back and read about the
Yeah.
Spanish Arabic. I'm like, oh my God. So
Yes.
please, I'm sure a lot of our listeners won't know about it. So please tell it like in great
Yeah,
all the story.
so I'm not like 100% familiar with the history, but the
That's
Moors came
okay.
into Spain somewhere, I think, seventh, eighth century, and there was this Amir who created this different caliphate in Spain, and they were in power till the end of the 15th century. And the thing with Spain is that once the what they call Reconquista happened,
Mhm.
a lot of it is the Catholic Spanish history, and that's the history that people want to portray, and we are familiar with that in many countries, right? That
Yes.
the conquerors tell their version of the story,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's true more of Spain than I realized of India also. And you realize that the language is filled with words which have the Arabic origin, like it's amazing the kind of words that exist, dishes, gaffas, because apparently somebody called Ghaffar Khan invented the glasses. So the glasses in Spain are called gaffas. Arroz, arroz is rice. And they keep saying ohala, which is a variation of inshallah, so God will.
Oh.
So yeah, and lots and lots of other asukar, which is sugar, so lots of words which you hear and you immediately know that it's got an Arabic influence,
Mm.
champu, which is shampoo, habon, which is sabun, so lots of words which are familiar to us as well because of the Persian and the Islamic influence that we
Yes.
have in our languages. And what fascinated me was that I didn't know anything about it. Not that I pride myself on knowing about the history of the world, but it is so not spoken about.
Yeah, very true.
And that's just shows you how history actually is written by the people who conquer it, and therefore the ancient Spanish history, and it's not like it has got obliterated. It still exists. It
Yeah.
still exists in the southern part of Spain, because of the tourism there are lots of mosques which have become very, and then you hear stories about mosques having got converted into churches and
Yeah.
cathedrals and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was a huge revelation to me, and therefore I got it when people said Alhambra looks like the Golconda Fort, or the Golconda Fort looks like Alhambra, because the fort came later. Well, the original fort came earlier, but whatever. And then you realize that there are similarities in architectural style, and then you walk around the Granada lanes, and then you discover lots of food which have the same spices that we associate
Oh,
with.
really?
Yeah, so they
Like?
have, yeah, well, they have elaichi, and there's a lot of food which comes from across, from the with the Arabic influence. You have your platters, and you have spices which are sold in places like that. You have cardamom and pepper and cinnamon and all those things which are sold, and you
Mm.
realize that a lot of that is because of the spices that have come in. And so you feel a sense of kinship. You
Yeah.
realize how certain things are very similar culturally to the culture that you come from. And so that fascinated me a lot about southern Spain. And of course, you have places like Malaga, which is on the beach, completely populated by English tourists. They love Malaga because
Mm.
you get super cheap flights into Malaga. Um, where people, you had the disappointment where I was trying to find out, when I was trying to speak in Spanish and they want to speak in English because they're like, no, 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 no. And so you're like, I'm trying to
Yeah.
speak in English, in Spanish. So you had experiences like that. So very different. So in smaller tourist towns like Cordoba and Sevilla to some extent, or in Granada, you do get that influence. Whereas certain other places like Malaga, Madrid, Barcelona, of course, you barely hear about, that part of, unless you're doing a history tour,
Mm.
you don't get to see it. It's not in your face like it is in the southern Spain.
Oh. It's fascinating. I just loved reading about this. Talking to you last time, about this whole Reconquista and the recording that I had mentioned where the guest spoke about the Spanish Islamic influence in Peru, I read a lot of articles about this and how after this Reconquista, most of the churches and cathedrals in Spain are actually built on top
On
of a
top of
mosque.
this, yeah.
Or if you have an entire mosque structure, the central part of it will have a large big church or something, just to make it a point that, hey, we are the ones, the current ruling folks.
Yeah, so there's no difference, so whether you go to countries like Turkey or whatever, or
Yes, the Blue Mosque, yeah.
Yes, the conquerors always try to
Yeah.
superimpose their religion.
So we've been to Cambodia, and one of the temples, it was a Hindu temple, which was then converted to a Buddhist temple. It was beautiful because this temple had a lot of Buddha faces. Like there was some, I don't know, 70, 100 kind of huge Buddha faces. But these faces were earlier Shiva faces. So it had the three eyes. So our guide told us, observe this face closely. You will actually see a third eye. But
Amazing.
the entire body was still a Buddha one.
Yeah.
So he said basically what the latest conqueror who actually did this said that, we should not completely destroy the earlier influence. Let's keep it. But since now it should be a Buddha temple, so it has to be a Buddha temple. So, but let's not destroy the earlier idols and the structures. So it was so beautiful to see, very similar to what you're saying. Even apparently in the one in, I'm not sure whether it's the Granada one or the Sevilla one, where you have a huge, I think it's the Sevilla one, you have a huge clock tower where the clock tower is actually a full minaret, old minaret. Just the top of it has been changed for it to be a clock tower, right?
So that's probably the monument that I was the most impressed with. Sevilla, the cathedral in Sevilla.
It's the biggest or the largest or something like that, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I had another kind of an aha moment in that cathedral, and it is just mind blowing. It's quite gothic in its architectural style, and therefore there's a lot happening, and there are these niches where you have chapels of different saints, and things which I guess we are familiar with because we go to convent schools and stuff like that.
Yep.
And to some extent, and architecturally also it's overwhelming. Like you walk into it, and probably the only other place where I had that sense of, oh my God, what is this, was in the Sagrada Familia in the Gaudis in Barcelona. But apart from that, Sevilla, I think, was kind of mind blowing for me because I sat in the cathedral, and I remember calling up. I called Ashok as well, and I was like, I video called. I said, I'm just going to video call. Don't say anything, and I'm putting myself on mute. I just want you to see this place, and it was just so over the top. So it was over the top to a point where you had to admire it. You had to say, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And this is ridiculously fascinating. And
I like ridiculous and fascinating in the same phrase together.
Yeah. And I just sat in that cathedral, and I was quite emotional. For some reason, I started crying, and there were a lot of these tourists who were taking selfies, and I wanted to beat them.
It was so overwhelming, is it? The architecture, it's whole thing is in gold or something like that, right?
Yeah,
the whole
just and you have these throngs of people who are sitting there. It's super touristy, of course. You have lots of people sitting there, and you go from place to place, and then you get lost because it's so big, and you're like, have I seen this before? And all that. I was just really fascinated by it. And I'd done the clock tower, and I came back down, and what kind of was upsetting me, or I guess moving me, was the fact that we as human beings have this amazing ability to create beauty. We can do such amazing things in terms of architecture and art and paintings and frescoes and all that, but so much of it is with the intention of showing that you are more powerful than the one who was there before.
Yeah.
And therefore I superimpose a mosque, I superimpose a temple, I superimpose a whatever on top of something else that existed. And while the end result may be very, very phenomenal, the
purpose behind.
Yeah, so the deep down, I was disappointed almost in human beings, that our ability to create doesn't arise from this just just the wanting to express your creativity, but it also arises from this, need to say, yes, I'm more powerful than you, and therefore I'm making something bigger than yours and more beautiful than yours and more ornate than yours. So yeah, it was a deeply moving experience. Alhambra also was, it was one of the places which was super cold. Granada was cold that day. It had been raining.
Alhambra is Granada, right? Yeah,
In
yeah.
Granada. So I was, all bundled up in jackets and stuff because it's higher in the mountains. You feel the chill.
Oh,
And it was also raining. So it was again a very beautiful experience because I'd gotten away from the heat of Cordoba and Sevilla, and I'd come to Granada, and it was lovely and cold. And yeah, I bumped into an Excel well,
what?
yeah, alumni. He was doing a tour with his wife and son, and his wife nudged him and said something because I was wearing a sweatshirt.
Excel sweatshirt. God, Excel sweatshirts, man. My husband and his entire Excel gang are just obsessed with the XLRI sweatshirts. I think he has close to half a dozen of them.
We had
Alan
had our
Wheat.
25th year homecoming. So I was wearing that sweatshirt, and
Nice.
he did this nudge, nudge, and then he came up to me and asked me or whatever. So,
World
you're
is a small
finding
place. I like it.
everywhere. But yeah, so that was Alhambra was quite. It felt like the walk up and all felt similar to Golconda. But when you know a place very very familiar, which is very familiar to you, like Golconda is to me, you don't notice the similarities as much. You notice the differences more.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I could sense why people said that. Why they
So
said.
what is Alhambra, the
Well, it's
place?
again, it's a fort city which was built by the last of the Moors, and they that was the last place which they lost, and that's when the Reconquista happened. And so, yeah, it has a lot of the Islamic architecture. You see a lot of designs and patterns which are similar to ones we have in India. So, to that extent, the similarities are there. And when you're walking up the fort, you get the sense that you're walking up the Golconda Fort as well.
Oh.
It is located on top of a hillock. You get these amazing views of the mountains and the city on one side. So yeah, it was very impressive. Very impressive in a very different way, in a much more plainer way than the Sevilla Cathedral. But yeah, impressive nonetheless. So
Nice. It
that's
has
where
like
this
some wooden, a lot of wooden
pavilions,
patterns and
yeah, yeah,
all that in
pavilions
the
and stuff
place,
like that.
right?
Yeah. So very similar. If you go to Bidar Fort has something similar
Mm,
and all that. So I could see the similarities. I could
I
also
like
see
it.
the differences. Yeah.
Mm. So the whole complex in Granada, it also has a very large garden, which is the one that came in Game of Thrones, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is it? Okay. So yeah, I think now that you mention it, I think the guide did say something like that.
So the
Um,
Game of Thrones, there are multiple places that has been
Locations.
shot in Andalusia itself,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah. Correct. So yeah, they do. There's one James Bond movie which was shot on the beach that we used to go to quite regularly in San Jose.
Oh.
So yeah,
Oh, see.
so
So
yeah,
some Western movies, which is like, I never knew that it was shot in Spain.
yeah.
I always thought it was one of those Texas places only.
Correct.
But
But
then,
it's much cheaper to shoot there. So, there are stretches which I did. I did a train journey from Almeria, which was the nearest station from San Jose. From Almeria to Granada, I did a train. And it's just completely, so the beginning part of it is all desert with these crazy raw, very, very Western cactus. And then you get to the parts which are the more cultivated parts. So all you see is wheat, olives, and sunflowers.
oh, nice. Sunflowers make such a beautiful landscape
They
view.
do.
No, it's so
Yeah,
pretty.
correct. So much
Wow.
as I tried to capture those in a picture or videos, somehow you can never capture
You can never.
so
Yeah.
huge number of fields, and olive, oliva. So it was quite fascinating.
Oh,
Yeah.
lovely. So most of the travel was public transport or BlaBlaCars
Yeah, absolutely.
between
Nothing else.
this?
What else? Yeah, no, nothing else. Yeah.
As in self-driving and all of that, not really.
Oh no, I can't drive on the wrong side of the road.
Just put it as wrong side. Very nice.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Tell us about the place that you stayed in, San Jose.
San
What
Jose?
so is it one of those whitewashed beautiful looking towns. Many of them on the coast are these
But
Greece
it's
looking
not like,
white.
yeah, I mean, it's not like what you get in your head about Greece and stuff
Mm,
like that. No, it's more like a regular small town. It had a little town center. Everyone pretty much knows each other because the kids go to probably one of the few schools there, and there are beaches. The beaches are, and it becomes a completely different town in the summer.
Mhm.
So around the time that I was leaving, you already could see the folks coming in, and there are a lot of these rental properties all along the beach.
Oh.
And people have found a way to monetize their apartments, and even small garages they convert into a kind of a room with some access to the
Yeah.
beach, and it
Why
becomes
not?
a very very lucrative option. And so everyone's just doing that. Everyone's just looking for ways to give out, and most of the locals kind of, it's again the mixed feeling that, and more increasingly we are experiencing about wanting the tourist at the same time
The balance.
grudging the fact that they're taking over your city. And there are some beaches where if you cross over, it's a kind of a reserve land. You actually have to pay some, I think, 5 euros or 10 euros or something like that to get into that place.
Oh.
That is there even for locals, which people really feel bad about. It's only during the summer months, which is something which is quite, it's like people say, oh, you to go on to Raj Bhavan Road, you have to pay some money. So, they don't like it very much. Tourists are welcome because yes, they add to the economy, but there's also this thing about, oh my God, it's so crowded.
It is true. After staying in some place like this for like a couple of weeks, if you go to Madrid, you'll find that crowded. From Madrid, if you come to Delhi, you'll find this crowded. So it's like, even we'll feel that way. So
so it was funny that I started feeling that way. So, I was like, I'm a tourist. I shouldn't feel that way. But I just
I am the person they are scared about.
Correct. But I came early, so So that's
So
why
when the season you went, was it the swimming season yet? You're a swimmer, right?
Yeah. Well, the sea is much warmer in southern Spain.
Ooh.
Well, I did try it a couple of times. I was like most Indians, I don't see what's the point of lying on a beach and getting
burnt.
dark. I just don't understand that. I hate the sun. Whereas those people love the sun. They love to go into the sea and swim and do all that. So I had lovely times with the family. There was this amazing time when I actually was making pani-puris on the beach.
What? Oh, what? You made pani-puris as well? Oh my.
I mean, pani-puri is the thing that I'll eat if I know that I'm going to die tomorrow.
Yes, me too.
So,
Me too.
So, so
it's my number one.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, I carried this whole packet of ready to fry puchkas. So, a couple of times I took this big lot of fried pani puris in a big box, and I'd taken potatoes, and chickpeas are readily available there, garbanzo. And so you mix the boiled potato and, put a whole lot of onions and stuff like that. And I had carried tamarind with me. So I made imli pani, and then I made the meetha chutney with jaggery, which I carried.
I am so proud of you. You have represented India amazingly well there.
And there was there were a couple of people where I was not sure they'll be able to handle the spice levels of the water. So I actually put gazpacho, so you get which is like a cold tomato soup. So instead of, I put the potatoes in the garbanzo and put cold tomato soup and gave it to them.
I love this idea, man. This is, I think, Queen movie. There's one where she does the pani puri idea. No? Oh, what a phenomenal idea. So what other awesome dishes did you cook for the folks there?
Well, I did a lot of the curries, and a lot of it with tomato, and because you get amazing tomatoes, a lot of it with tomatoes. But I also made mirchi ka salan, the began ka, bengan. Yeah, so I would try different things. Another thing I got them hooked onto was I carried packets of tamarind rice, the pulihora.
Yes, I love it.
So made tamarind rice, made lemon rice. One day made a full thali, made lacha parathas, and made.
Did they cry when you left?
Yeah, they said, well, they were kind of, you have to come back because we've just got too used to the food. And we're still in touch very, very frequently. So that So I go around the mango markets in Hyderabad and send them videos saying, I miss you guys, because mangoes were like ridiculously expensive there. Just terrible mangoes. You get like €4 and you get one mango, and they're like, what you'd pay probably 40 rupees a kilo or whatever.
Oh, man. You feel it's just wrong.
Very disappointing.
Yeah.
But yeah, apart from generally, I mean, as you know, Europe is definitely more expensive. So you can't keep converting. The moment you convert, then you're like,
you're gone. Yeah.
correct.
You won't drink water also. It's like
You
that.
won't drink water. Yeah, well, there was not much need to drink water. Wine is super inexpensive.
Fabulous, alternative beer and wine over there.
Correct. Kava, which is, the bubbly. It's so inexpensive. You go and buy very decent quantity wines for like €8, €9, €10, things which you would not even imagine, being that inexpensive. And I discovered the local drink. What do you think it is?
And it can't be wine because you just mentioned wine. What can it be?
It has wine in it. Let me say that.
I would say sangria, but then is it?
No, not really, because sangria is not drunk much by locals. Sangria was apparently, again, a thing that was invented as a part of a Spanish festival they were doing in US or something like that. And they were like, we need to, give them something which is very Spanish. So sangre means blood. So it's like the blood, the hot-blooded Spanish thing.
Oh my
They
God.
created the drink with chopped up fruit and put it in wine and gave it. So it became a big thing. So you find more sangria in all the touristy places, but the locals drink, especially
something with orange juice and wine or something. They have a lot of orange juice in Spain also, no?
Yeah, they do. But this, they have it with lemon juice mostly.
Oh, okay.
Red wine, and it's called Tinto de Verano.
Okay.
So again, Tinto, which is the tinted, the red wine is called
okay.
Tinto. And again, some interesting food fact there, which again I found fascinating, that otherwise the word red in Spanish is rojo.
Okay.
And white is blanco. So you have vino blanco, but you have vino tinto. And I was like, why isn't it vino rojo? This I did some research even, when I was in India, when I was learning Spanish, and I was like, there's something there is to it. Why would it not be called rojo? And then I realized that the word rojo as red came into the Spanish language after the process of making red wine came into the country. And so tinto is the tinting, the process is described as the red wine process. And
I thought it'll be something related to pink wine or the rosé or something that we call, something like that.
No, so vino tinto is the red wine. So they have Tinto de Verano, which literally translates to the red wine of the summer, which is a little bit of red wine mixed with a whole lot of lemon soda.
Oh, is it nice?
Oh my God, it is super refreshing. And when you're in Andalusia, sitting, not knowing why the sun is so much brighter here when the temperature says it's 32 degrees.
Feels like 42.
Feels like 52. And yeah, so Tinto de Verano is very, very, is extremely refreshing. So yeah, I had my fill of Tinto de Verano. And again, another interesting food story is that of tapas.
Yeah.
And everyone knows tapas.
Yeah.
But tapa, the word actually means the cover, the lid or the dhakkan that you put on top of whatever. And apparently, sometime in history, there were these laborers who were not getting a good enough diet because they were spending all the money that they were getting, they were spending on booze, like, like this.
Like what it is here as well.
Correct. And so therefore, the people, the government, or whatever, the kings instructed the taverns and the people selling the booze that you have to give them something to eat whenever they order drinks, so that they come to work the next day and continue to build stuff.
Okay.
So they would give them a glass of whatever they were drinking, and on top of that they'd put a dhakkan, and on the dhakkan they would put some food. So whether it's olives or whether it's some kind of, fried stuff, like what we
like peanuts chakna for us.
Exactly, chakna. So it's exactly chakna, but there you have fried octopus and, a whole lot of seafood. And so they put that on the tapa. And then so it's like a tiny little plate that you force to eat before you have your drink or while you're having your drink. And that's how the name tapas came.
So that's why most of the bars are tapas bars that actually...
small plates, but even in Spain, if you go to a local restaurant in a non-touristy place, they'll give you a drink and they'll give you a tapa. they have to give you something along with it. It's just, it could just be like a handful of olives or some nuts or something like that, but they would definitely do that.
Oh, nice. One of my favorite small plate thing along with alcohol was we were in Nepal and they'd given us popcorn along with a glass of beer. We usually get peanuts or maybe some fried.
Yeah, so maybe that's why when you go to Darjeeling, you get popcorn along with your drink.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, huge influence. Baju mein to hai, udhar hi to hai kinds. Yeah. So Nepal, every place you go, they'll give you popcorn along with your drink there. So we had such a nice, and I love popcorn.
Yeah.
I mean, more than movies, I look forward to the popcorn than watching the movies. Like that, I'm so fond of popcorn. Awesome, awesome. Okay, what about you? So you said you went snorkeling in San Jose, right? How was that? Like, what is underwater life like?
I had these two experiences which, well, like, I can't even describe how it was like an out of the world experience. So on my first weekend there, Serge, my host in San Jose, he has a friend who does snorkeling trips. Like, he runs to a company in Andalusia. And of course, they're good friends. So Serge said that there's someone here, and he said, yeah, bring her along, no problem at all. And so I went snorkeling, and I really struggled in the beginning. And this is like the proper sea thing. The only snorkeling I had done was in Hawaii, where you just float on the top near the shore, and you see these lovely fish, and then you come back. But this was like going into the sea, and had a bunch of people with me who were like very, very experienced. So I knew that I was not in any physical danger, but snorkeling is, you need to get used to the breathing, the apparatus, and you have to make sure it's sticking out and stuff like that. So it was challenging in the beginning, and it was also challenging to get into this in the snorkeling suit
because you said the place might have been cold, so wetsuit.
It was a wetsuit, and I was finding it very, very tough to it's not the easiest to get into. And then, but anyways, amazing experience, a couple of hours in the sea, and just came back. And I just was like, oh my God, what is this? What is it that within 4 days of coming to Spain, I'm in the Mediterranean, going in and seeing all these amazing fish. And oh my God, it was an amazing experience. And the same guy was also does stargazing trips.
Oh, wow.
And so he has this powerful telescope where he does this on a clear night. And I was lucky enough to be invited to one of those as well. So I went, and the tour was completely in Spanish. So I understood maybe 50% of it. But yeah, it was just... it was mind blowing to see and obviously, it's completely not polluted. So the kind of stars that you see, you see satellites moving in the sky.
Oh, man.
You never get to see in India, of course.
Lovely. And what you kind of go outskirts of the small town?
You go to the beach.
You go on the beach.
Go on the beach. Yeah, San Jose itself is a small town. So this was on the beach, and you just have to lie down on the beach on mats, and then look up, and he points out the different things, and then you go and see it through the telescope. So yeah, amazing.
I love it. Yeah, lying down on the beach during the day is not my thing, but definitely evenings and nights, 100%. I would just love it.
Completely agree with you.
I would just love it. Yeah. Oh, beautiful, man. Wow. So that was San Jose. So that San Jose was only...
Yeah. So San Jose was my base. So what I did is, whenever I was doing something in Andalusia, I would go and then come back to San Jose. So I was not carrying too much luggage. And then finally I went, like when I left San Jose for good, I packed everything and went to Madrid and Valladolid. And then I went by this fast train to Barcelona, and then spent 3 days in Barcelona and then flew out there. But both Madrid and Barcelona to me were kind of disappointing, because I felt like one of the 500,000 tourists around in that city. So it didn't feel like an experience that I was having, which was very, very personal to me. I was just a regular tourist in those places, but I did a few walks. I did a historical walk. I did, most of the food walks were completely not possible for me to do, because they were just tapas walks. I wouldn't have been able to eat anything for sure.
That's true.
But yeah, I did go around, walking around, and on my own as well in these cities. Yeah, but the San Jose and the Andalusian experience, which I don't think is on many people's tourist lists, was...
And it should be.
Yeah, it definitely should be.
Yeah.
Definitely should be.
And in fact, just doing this trip would easily take about 2 weeks if I want to just, as a tourist, do Andalusia.
Yeah, definitely. So you need to cover, Granada, you need to cover Cordoba, Sevilla. They're all in kind of, in a triangle kind of a thing. So you could combine cities. You would combine cities if you don't have a base like I did.
Right.
And yeah, definitely. And then if you're a tourist like me, I like to spend time in a city. I don't like to go and see 5 monuments and
Tick,
leave.
tick, 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 tick mark.
Yeah, I don't like the tick mark thing. So I like to come back and relax and read that evening, wherever I'm staying. I like to read a little bit, read more about the city, and then go back the next day and see something else. So in an ideal world, I would like to go back to Andalusia and spend another few weeks and just discover these, cities in depth. Because I still feel that you don't do enough justice to a city if you just go there for 2 days or 3 days or whatever. But yeah, everyone has their own way of visiting a city. And this is again totally personal, how much time you like to spend in a country or in a city or whatever. And some people are totally comfortable spending 2 days in each city and getting a sense of the city and the country rather than doing an in-depth thing.
Yeah.
I like to get under the skin of the city. I like to spend time, sit on park benches, watch the world go by. And so that's my kind of travel.
Very nice. And I've heard of lots of very, very beautiful parks in this places that you've been to. Any
Yeah.
that you particularly remember or
I
something?
just had this very relaxing, I was really tired. I'd walked around a lot. This was in Cordoba, and I don't even remember the name of the park. And I was just walking, doing a tour, and then I walked up and down the streets, and then finally I came to this little park, and I was just sitting there, and there were two other people who obviously had come out from the local offices, and they were sitting and having their lunch. So one of them was eating noodles, and the other one was having a sandwich, probably with ham or whatever.
Mm.
And I was sitting on another park bench eating my, I think I made some pasta and I'd carried with me. And I just felt at peace with myself that I'm sitting and like a local, I'm sitting and having lunch during lunch hour and, resting my feet a little bit before I move on to my next site visit. So I think you find many parks like that in other parts. And you tend to go to parks which are touristy, where you have something to see. But I like to go to parks where the locals just go, and nameless parks like this. So lots of green spaces, especially in the cities. And travel, even public transport in many cities in Spain is quite easy. In most cities, you just pay a standard rate to get into the bus. So there's no question about change and, where I'm going. So I think it just be like a euro and 60 cents or whatever. So I remember doing a lot of that. I remember in Valladolid where since the pandemic, and it's not a super touristy town, where they accept only cards. And when I was there, I had to go to the Jaipur Literary Festival, and I didn't know that you can only do cards. And the cards were sold in the center of town. And I was staying in an Airbnb, which was slightly out of, the touristy area. And I got into the bus and I said, I was just putting my money in. And he's like, no, 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 only card. And I said, I don't have a card. He said, well, you have to get off the next stop. And so then I was like, okay, I got off the next stop and I was like, okay, I'll look for a place where I can get a card and recharge the card. And there was nothing around that place. So there were these, and the elderly get to travel for free in Spain. So there was this old couple. Well, they were not a couple. There was a man and a woman at the bus stand, and they were talking to each other. And I went up to them and I said, look, where can I buy this card? And so then he's like, no, no, the card is available in the center of town, which is like 5 bus stops away. So I said, yes, but that's like the conundrum, right? I can't travel on the bus.
Correct. How do I reach there? From there, I have to come back. It's a cycle, right?
Correct. So, there's a hole in the bucket, that story. So, and so then he's like, vamos, which is like, come with me. I will show you what to do. And he got into the bus and he told the, bus driver something. And then he was getting off a couple of stops before I needed to get off. So he told me in Spanish, don't have to pay any money. And if someone asks you, tell them I'm not paying money and get off.
It is the tone that you need to speak in,
Yes,
huh?
you just, and then I was like feeling so guilty, I'm having a free bus ride, and I was feeling really, really guilty. Anyway, and I very like guiltily got off at the stop. No one cared, no one really cared about the fact that I was getting off like this. But yeah, and then I went and bought the card, and for the next 3 days when I was in Bayadoli, there
You
was
paid
no.
a little extra somewhere else so that because you got a free ride
Well, I
here.
gave the card to a local. I said, use the rest of the trips on the
Oh
card.
man. It's just feeling guilty and the fear of, oh my God, what if something
Exactly.
happens? We don't know what's
Correct,
gonna
correct,
happen.
correct.
We
Yeah.
don't know the local,
I'm
ways
a,
and means.
yeah, where I do lots of things in life which are not, on the beaten, like off the beaten path. I'm a big rule follower. I find it very uncomfortable to break rules like these. So yeah, so that's kind of the story that I have. And I remember that couple telling me, don't worry, no te preocupas, like we will make sure that you get onto the bus and
How sweet, man. They need not bother at all, right?
correct, correct. So, those kind of stories stay with you much longer
Yeah,
than
yeah.
the year that Alhambra was built or,
Correct.
like that. So,
Correct.
so that's why I have this. And again, when talking about similarities, did I mention Alhambra? Another experience, which is again a little touristy experience, which they do, is they have these caves which they've converted into these kind of dancing studios. Well, not studios, but restaurants with an area for the dancers
Flamencos.
and the flamencos. Yeah. So,
Mm.
and there has been research on this area where you trace the flamenco dancers to the Romani community and therefore to the Banjara community in India
Really?
and all that. Yeah. So they look also very similar to the Banjaras. They have those kind of features, big eyes, and oh my God, the dancers, they are just absolutely brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So while it is a super touristy experience, definitely people need to do that because it's something that you just get caught up in the rhythm of and the energy levels that they display while doing this. I mean, just incredible. So
I was going through some videos of different places in Spain before we started recording, and so many of them. So you go to this particular square, and you'll have very high chances you'll see someone dancing the flamenco. You
yeah.
do something, you very often you'll see something in that square in front of this church, in front of that cathedral. So actually, while going, you can just see people or in a park, once in a while at least.
Well, I don't think I saw flamenco like that. I
Hmm.
definitely saw people playing the guitar and singing and, doing all that. So all that is there probably
Hmm.
because I left before the peak of the tourist
Ah,
season.
probably. This might be one of those touristy things as well, because they also
Correct,
want
correct,
money in the hat that they keep there for public things. So
correct.
probably.
And I spent very little time in Madrid and Barcelona compared
Hmm.
to other places. But yeah, I can easily see that happening in many of the squares.
Can you join them? Or is it like one of those?
I'm sure they'd be happy if you joined them, but yeah, it's very similar to the Kathak beats as well. You did the
Hmm.
1, 2, 3, 4, the way the feet tap. Yeah, so it
Ah.
reminded me a lot of all that. So there are certain very touristy experiences that I did just because you do those things.
Yeah. It's also nice. It's a skill. So it's nice to see someone and
Correct,
it's
correct.
something happy. So why not? What about bullfighting?
Oh
Spain
no,
and bullfighting?
it does, but it's later in the year.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, I had these interesting conversations. There was this one bus journey I did where this woman sat next to me and we just started chatting. And I told her that I'm trying to practice my Spanish. And so she was, I mean, I don't know. I really wish I had taken her address or whatever, but we had these amazing few minutes talking to each other. And so I was asking her about bullfighting, and then she was like, "This was in Sevilla,"
Mm-hmm.
and she said no it's not at this time of the year, it's later in the year. I think
Okay.
it's probably in summer. So yeah, so yeah, and then got off and I gave her this spontaneous hug, and I just have very nice memories about that woman. I really wish I had taken her name and number or whatever. So yeah.
Some strangers always leave a mark,
Correct,
man.
correct, definitely.
Oh, so bullfighting is big there. They also have these elaborate horse fairs lots of such things happen. So
I
in
didn't
fact,
do any of those actually. I think
I
because
think all of them are the start of summer season.
tourist, yeah, correct.
है
Which
ना, लाइफ में फिर से एक बार
fine.
जाने का प्लान है ना बस.
Yeah, true, but it's also, you know, I mean, I'm totally fine not doing touristy things. In fact, one of the weird experiences I had was in Malaga, where you know, my friend Penny, she came down from the UK and she joined me in Malaga. And you know, Malaga is a place which has again forts, and it has lots of touristy places. Of course, the beaches as well, and it also had Picasso's museum in Malaga.
Oh.
Um, it was just bizarre. So we met up with Penny's friend, and this was the friend who had got me in touch with Serge, who got me in, you know, who the family that hosted me.
Awesome.
So I wanted to meet them and say thank you and all that. And so we went out for lunch with them. And again, in Malaga, it was raining a little bit. And so we decided to take a bus to the lunch place. And then after that, we walked back to Malaga because they lived in a small little kind of a town outskirts of Malaga. So we met them for lunch and then we came back. And then it was still drizzling, and it was a weekend where there was some kind of a festival in Malaga. And that, so we just went, and you know, Malaga is also famous for its churros kind of thing with chocolate. So we
did you have the famous
Yeah.
churros and chocolate? Oh, okay. Tell us a story, then tell us about the churros and chocolate.
Yeah. So anyway, so then we walked back, and then we just realized that the town is super crowded that day because every square there's some musical performance, like a formal one happening. So people are doing setups, and then we went into a lot of these places to have a drink and, you know, something to eat. And every place was super crowded. And those were the days when I think some of the monuments are free. So therefore, you had everyone lined up.
Oh,
So there
okay.
were huge lines to get into monuments. So Penny and I looked at each other and said, okay, we'll do stuff tomorrow because we still have a day or so. So we'll do stuff tomorrow. So we said, okay, fine. So the next day, we woke up, it was drizzling a little bit. We went out for breakfast. Then we said, okay, let's go. We were staying across the river. So we crossed the river and went to the touristy parts. And then we started walking around. And then I was like, I don't want to join the line to, you know, see that museum or whatever. So then she's like, okay, today we'll do that. Tomorrow, before we board the flight, she was going back to UK and I was going off to Granada. And I was like, oh, tomorrow we'll do it. You know, so that whole day we just spent sitting around chatting and having drinks and food in various places. And she eats fish. So she had a lovely time in Malaga. A lot of seafood. We went into places and then just sat and then had ice cream and, you know, did very normal things. And then the third day, we were maybe about 100 meters away from the museum, Picasso Museum. And then suddenly I stopped and I said, does it make sense to go into one museum? That was a Monday. I said, does it make sense to go into one museum? And that's all we can say we did in Malaga. Why don't we just not do the museum and say we've not done anything in Malaga? You know, that holds more weight. So she looks at me and she says, good idea. Let's go get a drink.
So either you see everything or you see nothing. There's nothing in between.
What is the point in seeing one museum? And that too, it's almost out of guilt. You know, like, oh my God, I've come to Malaga, stayed for 3 days and not seen anything. But there are different ways of killing time in a city. And I think just sitting and watching the world go by is a perfectly fine way.
I 100% agree. In fact, I have told this so many times on the podcast as well that, you know, in all my vacations, I like to have one such no plan, do nothing kind of days where I'm not like sitting in the room, even if I want to. Suppose I want to read a lovely book, even that's okay. But what I do is I'll probably go to a park or I'll go to a cafe and just like, look, I love people watching. I enjoy people watching. So I'll do a lot of people watching, go for a long walk, but I will not have an agenda at all.
Yes.
You went 3 steps forward by doing that for 3 full days.
Well, I pretty much did it for the 6 weeks, I think. I did have, you know, tours planned. Some days I definitely, especially the historical places, I made sure I did. It was also my way of giving back to the tourism industry in Spain because all of us had come out of this COVID chaos and they were much, much more dependent on tourism. So I always would sign up for one of the walks in every place. And one place I didn't get a time slot, but I did the whole tour in Spanish. Like I did the Spanish tour.
Oh, wow.
And like I said earlier, I probably understood only about 50% of it because they speak very fast as well. And but I felt that I need to do that. So that was another way that I did. Coming back to the churros with chocolate,
Yes, it's super popular, right? Having those thick churros dipped in
correct,
like
correct,
super
correct.
liquid chocolate.
Yeah. So it was So I don't have much of a sweet tooth. So after about 3 or 4 bites, I found it a little too sweet, but amazing ones. So, and everyone goes to that particular cafe. I can't remember now, but I'm sure Google search will reveal it in Malaga. So we met. So Penny and I met in that church. And again, what I remember of that day is having no sleep the night before. So I was leaving from San Jose and coming to Almeria and taking a BlaBlaCar. And my BlaBlaCar that I had booked was supposed to leave at 9 o'clock in the morning. And San Jose to Almeria is just under 2 hours by bus. So I knew that there was a particular bus stand close to where I was staying. So I, packed everything, taken my bags, gone to the bus stand, and I reached there. So the night before, I didn't sleep at all. It was one of those travel anxieties. Will I catch the bus? Because otherwise everything, this was the only trip where I had someone waiting for me.
Correct. You can't get
and in a BlaBlaCar, which had been booked. So I couldn't just land up and take the next available bus kind of a trip. And so I didn't sleep a wink that previous night. And I reached the bus stand. The bus was supposed to leave at 6. And I reached the bus stand maybe about half an hour before. It was cold. It had rained the previous night. So it was really cold. And the bus stand seats were cold. And everything was dead in the city. And I remember it was a little eerie almost, And 6 o'clock comes. And normally these buses are like super efficient. So 6, 6:05, 6:10, 6:15, 6:20, and the bus is not coming. And here I thought I'll reach Almeria at 8 o'clock and go to a nearby cafe, which I'd gone to on my previous trip, and have a nice coffee and breakfast, and then board the BlaBlaCar. And nothing. Absolutely no bus. Suddenly, something told me that I should look on the schedule. So there was a schedule pasted. And it was written that the Saturday schedule starts at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh man. What was the weekend timings from you?
Weekend timings. And I had obviously not taken that into account. And anyway, thankfully, the bus came at 7 and I got in and I told the bus driver, I said, look, I need to be at Almeria at 9. I have a car booked at 9. Will we reach by 9? He said, we'll reach by around 9:05, 9:10 maybe. So then I messaged the BlaBlaCar driver saying that I may be a little late. Would it be possible for you to wait for me? He said, I have 3 others. If they are okay with waiting, then then I don't have a problem waiting. And so then ended up reaching 5 minutes. I even had time to go to the loo and all that.
Very important.
And so I remember, getting out of the BlaBlaCar, immediately I carry a lot of these little silk scarves, which I give to people who I meet who, have done something nice for me. So the driver was very sweet. He said, don't worry, I'll convince the others to wait for you. And so I still made it on time, but I was very, very, sentimental about the gesture. So I immediately gave him a silk scarf, and he had this look on his face like,
why?
Why are you giving it? So then I said, por su esposa, like for your wife, and it's a silk scarf from India. So thank you for agreeing to wait for me, even though you didn't have to. So he was like, oh, that's so sweet. And he was like super. And I'm rushing to this chocolate place because Penny said we need to start our tour from there. So running to the park. And so that's, the memory that has stayed behind about the churros rather than the actual churros.
And it's a story more than the story more than the thing. Correct. And plus being sleepless. Correct time you've had chocolate, huh?
Yes. And that was the time when, I realized that Malaga people want to speak to you in English. So whoever I was checking with was insisting on speaking to me in English because they wanted to practice their English because of the tourism.
A lot of places in Spain actually have these retired folks from UK who want to do their retirement planning
a lot of them
in Spain.
I know Penny's friends, some of them do stay in Spain, not because of anything else, because they've just retired and decided to buy a house in Spain and live there. So
is Spain overall cheap?
Yeah,
Or-
much cheaper in compared to the rest of Europe. Oh yeah, definitely.
Oh.
And one of my neighbors had moved to Switzerland just a month before that, and she'd moved like baggage. And on the phone, because we were both on Europe time, chat for what's happening, and she was telling her experience, and I was telling about mine. And so we would compare how much is banana there in Switzerland. Oh my God, it's only this much in Spain. So typical that Indian mentality of
Correct.
prices
Correct.
and converting. And we're like, and we used to crib with Moin, outside the building. He would say for 60 rupees a dozen, and we would say, nahi, 50 rupiya.
वो तो करना बनता है.
Correct.
Otherwise, the joy will not be there. Not that the 10 rupees anything is just a joy that you get doing that 10 rupees negotiation. But Switzerland is atrociously expensive. It is terrible. Only even you go on working towards there, no, those guys will say the only thing cheap here is water, which is free. Other than that, kuch bhi nahi hai. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, Spain is, that's why, I mean, even things like olive oil, things like sunflower seeds, you compare the prices of that to the other parts of Europe also. What you lack in Spain compared to, say, a UK is the ability to buy Indian food. I mean, not just restaurants, but even when I would run out of things, there was no chance for me to get tamarind in Spain. So, whatever I bought is what I used. And things like that you don't get. So you don't have those options like you have in other parts of the world, like UK, US. But other than that, for vegetables and all, really, really inexpensive if you compare it to the rest of Europe. Not if you compare it to India, of course.
Yeah, chalo, we should not do that as well.
You shouldn't do that.
You should not do that.
Except for wines, where you should do it and drink a lot of it.
Maybe meat as well. Like just like wine, maybe meat might be cheaper there as well. I do not know.
I'm not sure it would be cheaper, but you would get options which
huge
are
variety.
Like, huge variety. And it is a seafood, at least Andalusia is definitely a seafood lovers, paradise. It's just get the most amazing seafood.
I've heard snails are like a huge thing there, the way they eat it and all. I've seen some videos of all of it.
I've definitely seen things like octopus, which are, and shrimp, which are turned into really crazy stuff. But
the most popular, the rice item that they had, the paella, right? That has shrimp as well, right?
Yeah, that's certain parts. The traditional one, which is supposed to have started in the north of Spain in the Catalan, region, it's supposed to have rabbit as the main protein.
Oh,
yeah. Again, paella and sangria have become like a very touristy thing. So you have paella being sold in different...
they say that you should not just go and eat it anywhere because it will be very, very random kinds. You should know where you get actual traditional paella,
like
and
the
then
biryani
same. I was just going to say that. Just love that. Yeah, that's true. But biryani in Hyderabad sab jagah acha hi hota hai. It might be acha and acha s, but at least you'll get the acha.
Correct. The other thing which was a joy to get in the supermarkets was saffron, because I think Spain is the largest producer of saffron in the world.
Acha?
Yeah, saffron. So asafran they call it, and it's available very, very freely and quite inexpensive as well. Very good quality saffron, and almonds.
So you took 12 kg things, 12 kg spices, so you got 12 kgs of this bag. Anyway, bag space.
I don't think not too many people in the world can afford 12 kgs of saffron.
Not saffron, at least, unless you want to set up a business.
Correct. Yeah, no, I did get back some interesting things. I got back, tinned olives. I got back olive oil. So I got back some really nice pepper. I wish I could have carried back tomatoes, but
that's true. What about oranges? Apparently, you have streets and streets of orange trees everywhere.
God. It's just Sevilla is crazy for oranges. Had the most amazing orange juice in one of the small little kind of a cafes on the side of the street.
I love those kind of things.
Yeah, I just stopped and I just went inside and I said orange juice and tostada con tomates, and it was a phenomenal meal. And I think I paid something like 3 or 4 euros or something, not very expensive. And I was like, I have to go back the next day and I'm going to have 2 glasses of orange. And Murphy's Law, they are closed on that day. So yeah,
Oh,
I
damn
couldn't,
it.
but yeah. But again, when you're doing a long trip like this, what helps is to figure out where students are eating.
Hmm.
So I would look out for places where I would see bunch of students around, because I know that that place is going to be, uh,
Yeah.
selling stuff which is not as expensive. So like I would walk into a small little, bar or whatever in a small town, and I would pay 2.5 or maybe €3 for a tinto de verano, which I was doing in places in San Jose. But I would go to Madrid and it would be €9 and €10 for tinto de verano.
Wow.
And then you're like, what is
Not cool.
this? This is not cool. So that's when you start resenting
Yeah.
tourists
Large cities on the whole. Yeah.
and large cities. And then
Yeah.
there were also, you get this weird possessiveness about the city, about a country. And so I was there as the only Indian around. And then you go to Madrid and you go to Barcelona, and there are so many Indians around. I'm like, what are they doing there?
It's never what are we doing here, it's always what are they doing here.
But it's
Yes,
always
I have the same kind, so I can totally understand.
yeah.
We were in Turkey like this. We did a driving trip around Turkey. So one small place, we went to have lunch somewhere, and they gave us they have pomegranates of some weird size, okay, like unbelievably huge. And they just give it away because there are trees and trees and trees of pomegranates. I mean, we were not staying in an Airbnb the
Yeah.
following day. So we're like, how do we cut this pomegranate? You have to cut it, and you can't like break it or peel it and
Correct.
eat it. So then we had to find, so we were just walking somewhere. There was someone making pomegranate juice. We said, can you please make with this? We'll pay for you. We'll pay for you. We have no problem. Just make it. So just like they have a manual kind of a juicer. They had the same thing for pomegranate, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
The pomegranate juice there. I mean, every tree is either a pomegranate tree or an orange or an olive.
Yeah.
Every single, and there's no one picking out, from, it's not
Correct.
public, it's all on the road. No
Correct.
one is plucking, no one. I'm like, but it's like so inviting, right? It's like right there and no one's plucking it.
Correct.
So then for a long time, we were all staring at one compound which had lots of, it was a police station, and they had like lots of orange trees. Those cops came at us and they said, you want some? We're like, yeah, we want some. So they were actually, then when they were going around plucking the oranges, so then they just gave us like some 6 each, go eat. Because they have like trees and trees and trees of oranges. And the way they don't like literally pluck, they keep something below the tree like a big cloth, and then they shake the tree. The whole thing will fall down. All these things are so joyful to see.
I saw a lot of those in Sevilla, and then I was like, why isn't anyone plucking the thing? Then later on, I asked someone, and they said that those are slightly bitter ones. So then immediately my mind went to, they'll make such lovely narthangai pickle.
I thought you were going to say bitter marmalade. You went to narthangai. Very good. I like your version more than mine. Yeah, man. Yeah, apparently one of those, a few of those trees are, I mean, I think the one near the main church is supposed to be one of the oldest ever orange trees or something.
They have, it's called the courtyard of naranjas. Naranja is what they call oranges.
Really?
Yeah. So jugo de naranja is orange juice when you go and order.
Look.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Again,
too many similarities.
Too many, yeah.
Too many similarities. Lovely, man. So in all these different little towns that you went, so I mean, Granada and all of that shouldn't be called little, but not the Madrids or the Barcelonas. Which one really stood out for you? And like, if I can't do an entire trip of Andalusia,
yeah,
which one place I should definitely, I want to experience everything. I want history as well, but I want to know, like, how does living in Spain feel? Not touristy, crazy kinds.
I think if you want to sit and watch the world go by, I think Granada is very good, because you do Alhambra and then you can do the rest of the things. You can do these little squares. But as a city to walk around, and I also went during the Festival de Patio. So, all the balconies, they decorate with flowers.
Oh, the patios is patios there. Oh, beautiful.
Patio.
Okay.
It's just, it's a way of saying patio. So it was a festival at the time that I went. And so all of the balconies are decorated.
Wow.
And the city is a joy to walk around at that time. So Cordoba was really lovely. So you have a Jewish section, and then you have this, little lane. So it's what I imagine the old city of Hyderabad would have been back in the time, and if we had decided to preserve all the Havelis and all that. And that's exactly how Cordoba was. Cordoba was a joy to walk around. So I walked so much around Cordoba. And again, there are lots of other historical things to do. There is a cathedral, mosque slash cathedral. There are palaces to visit, which with amazing horse stables and all that. And one of those, that was again a rookie tourist mistake, where I kept waiting in the line to get to the gate. And then when you reach the gate, you realize that that line is for people who have already bought the tickets. So I waited an hour and a half, and then I was like, okay, that's it. I'm not going to go back to the ticket counter and stand again and to spend another
And
hour.
then again, an
and
hour and
spend
a half.
another
Yeah.
hour. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to walk, sit on this park bench and see the people walking into the palace. So Cordoba that way has a lot. So if you like a mix of everything, Cordoba as a as something that I could relate to, I think Granada, because of the a more obvious Moorish influence there. So you have falafel stalls in every place and all that. Yeah. So so Cordoba also, I met this Pakistani guy making falafels. And he
Nice.
made falafel for me and refused to take money. And then I insisted, and all. So
Just because we are bhai, is it?
he spoke in Hindi. Yeah.
How nice, man. I do love such stories. I found so we were in some place, and there was a Bangladeshi selling magnets and souvenirs and all
Yeah.
that.
Probably
So when
Greece. I've seen a lot of those in Greece.
maybe I think it was Italy, but I'm not
Okay.
very sure. Okay. So I saw the guy and I very evidently knew that definitely somewhere India ke aspas. So and look very Bengali. So I said,
Yeah.
Apni ki Bengali.
Yeah.
My goodness.
That's
My husband walked away. He said, I know you guys are going to take an hour. He just walked away. He's like, you guys finish talking and then I'll be somewhere in the square. Find me.
Yeah.
He told me his whole life story. And then he's like, no, please do it. Please take it. But no, I cannot please take things. You have to
Yeah.
take money. I cannot please take. We're
Yeah.
just having a chat. But
Correct.
I mean,
So,
it's
yeah,
great joy
language.
listening to your own language when you're somewhere. I don't know why that joy. You've gone for a 2-week vacation, man, but why that joy? But there is some joy.
Yeah, so I had similar experiences with taxi drivers in New York.
Great joy, great joy. And
Correct.
beautiful, man. I had such a lovely time listening to all your stories. I mean, for me, the purpose of the podcast is never to do a itinerary kind of conversation, do day one, day two, because everyone, like you said, has a very different style of exploring places. That's why make it an itinerary kind of conversation really is of no use, because everyone has their own style.
My friend and I call it non-performance oriented holidays. Very few places in India have that. One of the places we consider non-performance oriented in India is Goa. When you come back from Goa, all that people ask you is, did you have a good time? No one will say, if you say you went to Madurai, oh, did you see that temple? Did you see this? And then there are so many must-do things in all these cities where
very true, man.
there's too much pressure on you, So no one says anything. Oh, did you go to go? Oh, did you have nice food? Did you lie on the beach and did you enjoy yourself? Yes. So non-performance oriented holidays are what I stand for. So
yeah, very, 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 very true. Like if I'm going, the story that you said where you spend the entire 3 days without going to any place, I'm fully capable of doing that. But when I come back, I'm like, oh shucks, I missed that particular place. How did I do it? I never get that when I'm in Goa. I mean, I still haven't been to a few very, very popular churches over there, but I'm never guilty that, oh my God, which I will if I'm in Hyderabad and I don't do Golconda if I'm there for a long time and things like that.
Correct. So
very
it's
nice.
strange that the profession that I have is fully dependent on performance-oriented holidays. I need people who have that urge.
The FOMO.
Yeah, at least the FOMO to see things or to experience things. So I hope not everyone's like me. Then I won't be able to spend money and do holidays like this.
Yes. Beautiful. If there's, one aha or ting moment about your entire vacation in Spain, which will create the FOMO for people to do a performance-oriented trip to Spain, would be?
Yeah, I would still say the snorkeling experience and the stargazing experience, but
that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, and I think what I want people to take away from this trip is that you need to sometimes just let go of pressure on yourself to do things. You can totally be fine visiting cities, visiting unknown places where you don't speak the language, because that's a tough thing.
Yeah.
Not going to a place where you don't speak the language is not that easy. And even though I can claim that I speak Spanish because I've done X levels of Spanish or whatever, there are places where I couldn't understand a word of what was being spoken because of the speed at which they speak. Like in
Oh.
Cordoba, one of the things they do is they don't use any, I think they forget all the consonants. So it's like a series of, and then you're like, okay, what the hell are you saying? So it's a very disconcerting experience not being able to explain to someone what you want to do or where you want to go.
Hmm.
And, like, for example, there was a point when my roaming stopped working, my phone
Hmm.
stopped working. And then there was this period when I changed over and I recharged the international roaming and it didn't work. And I had to catch a bus to do that. And then you feel helpless. And
Yeah.
I think those are the times when you discover things about yourself. So if putting yourself in unfamiliar situations, making decisions about whether you can go out at this time of the day or night in the city, those kind of experiences you'll never get if you go to a touristy place, do touristy things, have an itinerary. So I think personal growth definitely comes when you challenge yourself and you put yourself in situations where there are a lot of unknowns. And that's my takeaway, that you need to do that once in a while to grow as a person. So
Such a simple example of recharge, you said. We have lost the skill of talking to strangers and asking for directions. We have lost it because we are so reliant on, GPS and
yeah,
all of it. So, even such simple things will make you learn so much. Very
yeah.
beautiful, man. It's like बहुत ही मजा आ गया. But I really, really want to have such an experience of going and living with someone in their house. What else, man? How else would you know a lot of human behavior and of how it's similar across different, that country and India and all that? You'll get to know only when you're living with them, rather than
Correct, correct. Yeah, I mean,
going as a
and,
tourist.
deep down as human beings, we all have the same problems, heartbreaks and, and people looking at tourists in the twin-faced way. Yes, I need your money, but I don't need you, which is, and also
Yeah.
the Andalusian region is, because it's on the coast, a lot of people swim from Africa and come into Europe and illegally. They
Wow.
work in, I've seen twice, I've seen while on my morning walks, I've seen, very obviously Moroccan looking people coming out and walking, and they
My
still,
God, harsh, harsh, very harsh.
yeah.
Wow.
And then they come in and they find work in these plasticos. And so everyone knows that the plasticos will shut down if the Moroccans stop
Yeah.
working and stop coming in. And yet at the same time, there is this little bit of attitude against
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. We see such scenes here as well, no? Sad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, all righty. Jonty, now for wrapping up, I have to ask you this question that I've been thinking. So you've spoken about so many places. I mean, not just within Spain, but so many other places that you've toured in India, outside India. What is fascinating is you also go deep down and do a lot of why is this or how is this happening and all that. Ever thought of writing a book on all of this?
Well, I finished 50 pages, I can tell you that. I'm
Oh, you are writing
writing.
something. That's
I
lovely.
am writing. In fact, it was an outcome of the Spain trip. And I felt
Ah,
that I need to have something, not about Spain, it's about the communities in Hyderabad. And, how I keep talking about my fascination with the multicultural aspect of Hyderabad, but I want it to be about food. So, the
hmm.
different communities living in Hyderabad, how, trace their history, where they came from, try and speak to the people who came in earliest, who have records of when their family moved from various parts of the world or the country. And then do an analysis of the food that they eat and connect it to some commonalities of, being like the khatta aspect of Hyderabad, which we all love, the imli, and certain things which have changed because of them coming to Hyderabad, becoming maybe a more meaty diet or whatever. So how Hyderabad has influenced the food of that community and how the food of that community has influenced Hyderabad as well. So I've put down whatever is in my head. So yeah, I'm hoping to do a little bit of that over the next few months.
Wow, I'm so happy. I just asked you thinking, "Okay, oh my God, is it happening?" And you're like immediately with the yes, lovely.
Yeah, well, it was long overdue. It is long overdue. Till I finish, I can't say it was long overdue. Long
But
overdue.
now it's on record, huh? So you have to.
I know. So I think this is one way I'm forcing myself also.
So book is going to be, is it a lot of stories?
Lot of stories about the different communities in Hyderabad, lot about the food. Because, I really feel that the food history is underrepresented in literature, in books.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it'll be nonfiction for sure. So
Super looking forward, huh? And Jonty, can you tell us a few highlights you found through this research that you were doing for your book?
so I think, the Banjara community has a different story from the Gujarati bankers, from the Kayas, people who used to work in the court, the Maharashtrian community who are supposed to be good bookkeepers. And so lots of stories like that of people who worked, traditional families, Bengalis. There are a huge Bengali community in Old City who are into making jewelry. In the Old City, you see lots of shops with Bengali writing on, the Bengali signages. Where they talk about. So there's like all my muri and my aloo chop and all that I get from the Old City only. So whenever I go, so they cater to your piaji and tele
Yes,
bhaj.
yes.
So all that comes from those little gullies where people still go there and eat your puri sabji and aloo dum and tarkari and all
Yes.
that in the morning. And that community has been around for a long time. And it's a particular community who work with the jewelers, who work because they're very skilled jewel artisans, right? So
Fantastic.
yeah, so find people, talk to people. One person usually leads you to another person.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's how I do a lot of my research. Unfortunately, there's not too much of written stuff about these communities. So you can't do beyond a point. Primary research is, I mean, you have to meet people.
You have to
So
meet people, yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
so
Nice, lovely. Okay, if I'm coming to Hyderabad for like a 3 or 4 day tour, what are the things that you will really recommend? And this is for our listeners as well. Okay, I just have 4 days, and all 4 days I'm cool to do tours. It's not that I have anything else. Which kind of tours would we?
yeah, well, if you're into history, then definitely Golconda Qutub Shahi tombs, and Qutub Shahi tombs have been, are in a process of restoration. So, and so much of work has gone into it in the last 10 years or so. It's quite a changed place from anybody who's seen it. And, they've restored one of the tile work on one of the tombs, which is just beyond belief that they managed to do that. And that's like one definite place. And most of the people climb the Golconda Fort, come back, and they're like, we're too tired to go to the tombs, which are right next door. And then once you leave that area, you forget about the tombs. But
Yeah.
so the tombs are brilliant. And the old city, I mean, the Chaumala Palace, the Lad Bazaar, the Charminar area, walking around, sitting and watching the world go by in an Irani cafe. Try the biryani in a few places, come back in the night, try the kebabs. There's so much of other street food going on in the night. Purani Haveli, which is again historical, not as well kept as some of the other places. My absolute favorite would be Paiga tombs, which are these set of tombs which belong to a particular nobility is buried there, who are second in command to the Nizams, and just outstanding architecture, the
Beautiful, yeah.
stucco work there, etc. And there are lots of things to discover in Hyderabad, the British residency, which has again been restored and reopened to public.
Isn't that thanks to William Dalrymple? That's the one, right? That's the building?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah. And then if you go to the Sikandrabad area, the Holy Trinity Church, if you get access, go to the Sikandrabad Club. You have like so much Mahalaka by its tombs, Maulali. There are so many beautiful dargahs around the city. And the most underrated of all that, and which I think we are at the risk of losing the fastest, are the rocks of Hyderabad. We have like, there are about 23 rock sites, which are rock heritage sites. And these are the sites which have been, supposedly supposed to be preserved, but unfortunately not always the case. Amazing. Some of these rocks date back to 2.5 billion years. So, these crazy
Wow.
shapes that are there. So just walking amongst the rocks, we have a tour called Faith Amongst the Rocks, where we trace, one Dargah, one Meher Baba cave, and then one of the Hindu temples there. And the rocks themselves are absolutely fascinating. And unfortunately, a lot of the development which is happening around the high-tech city area means that those rocks are slowly but
Awful.
surely disappearing. But yeah, I mean, the rocks of Hyderabad, you could spend like a day there just exploring the rocks.
So fabulous. Okay, listeners, I'm very sorry. It's not 4 days. You have to like be there for 7 days, maybe. So plan a nice big trip. And this rocks thing was something I had no idea about. So ting moment for me. So across India, through all the different touring that you've done, has there been one, or what is the one city, town, or village that has surprised you in its charm?
So lots like that. I think each place has its own thing to offer. But I guess a few years ago, as a part of my, we run a tour called Khana Sutra, where we do a food tour across the country. So as a part of my recce's for that trip, I went to a place called Mandav or Mandu, which is about an hour or so from Indore. And I think it was everything that day. It was raining. It was during the monsoons. And so it was raining. And Mandu is kind of like what Hampi used to be about 15, 20 years ago. So, very few people actually knew about Hampi. And because it used to be the capital of a kingdom and then the capital moved, but the monuments remained, the spirit of the city continued. While Hampi now has become, UNESCO, and a lot of people go there as tourists, Mandu is still very, very, isolated. Not too many people go there. So I went in the middle of the monsoons, and you have these amazing palaces and structures, and I mean, tombs, and it's just outstanding. And you have this massive African baobab trees at every point, which is completely incongruous. And I was standing on top of this. On the terrace of a particular palace, and there was a slight rain, and you could see other parts of the city, and you could see the palace and the baobab trees, and one palace which is in the shape of a boat and stuff like that. And it was just like I had this crazily, oh my god, it's such a magical place kind of a moment. And yeah, so it still continues to remain fairly off the beaten path.
Yes.
And yeah, so I would rate that as a great experience. Otherwise, as a city, I guess I always go back to Calcutta and love it. So it's like a second home to me. So I lived there for a few years, but I miss the city a lot especially when I go back to the city. All the familiar haunts. It's one of those cities which changes constantly but remains the same. Yeah, so Calcutta, I would definitely put it as something that I know tomorrow if I take a trip to Calcutta, I'll come back all nostalgic and
And happy and good feels and all of it. Yes.
Everything. Yes.
Yes. So I'm from Bengal, actually. I'm born and brought up in a place called Durgapur, which is about 2.5 hours from,
yeah.
So also a steel township, just like how you mentioned, Jamshedpur is. And one of my earliest memories of going to a historical place was going to a place called Murshidabad.
Yeah, lovely.
Which is another such a small, and this was a school took us to Murshidabad for I think a 2-day kind of a trip. Fascinating place, man. I mean, I'm talking of 20 years back or maybe 15 years back or so. It wasn't that well maintained. Then I hope it's gotten better now.
It has.
We had a good guide as well who nicely with all the drama told us all about the place, etc. So that was one place that was sort of wow for me, kinds.
So you'll be happy to know that that's one of the stops for our upcoming November food tour.
Oh,
November Khana Sutra.
Dude, how do you discover such kind of? It's very off the beat, okay, but it's very unique because they have such a big Jain influence there, no?
Correct. So that's the Sheher wali cuisine. That's what we showcase, and the Santhali cuisine, which is the more tribal cuisine. Those are the two things that we are showcasing in Murshidabad.
No, very, very beautiful place. And I love Calcutta too. I mean, I went there last year during the Durga Pujas after a very long time. Oh my God. I mean, I really had a great time. Like you were up and about till 3,
Yeah.
4 in the morning, going to all the
Pandal
pandals and
hopping.
all that. Oh my God. And every pandal mein jaake ek snack khane ka. Some one
Yeah.
thing, one ghugni here, one jhalmuri there, and a fuchka
Oh.
there. And oh my God. And I'm a vegetarian, so
So am I.
but lots of amazing chart options. And after that fuchka, if you have that aloo churmur and all that they make,
Really.
oh, you'll fly, you'll just fly.
You're
So
talking my language.
yeah, we'll fly definitely. So street foods, which is your favorite city in India?
Oh yeah, Calcutta, hands down.
Calcutta.
Yeah. I mean, you can't even. There's no competition. I like Delhi as well, but yeah,
Hmm.
Calcutta. Nothing comes close to Calcutta.
Yeah, I think the spice levels are just perfect for me for Calcutta. मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है.
Yeah. Then the bigger issue I have with North Indian is they always try to make it richer. So they'll put
Hmm.
paneer and they'll put ghee, and I'm like, no, you don't do all that to street food. Keep it very simple.
So I'm married to a Gujju bhai. And so our half our trips will be to Ahmedabad, and Ahmedabad is
Absolutely.
everything has 5 kgs of cheese in it. And
I
if they have 5 kgs, my husband likes cheese so much he'll ask for another kg on top.
I think on my first Khana Sutra, the first Khana Sutra that we went, Ahmedabad was there, and we went to
Mm.
Manik Chowk, which is the night
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
market, right? And I just looked around and I was like, I'm convinced that the
yeah.
cheese industry, especially Amul, the
Yes.
processed grated cheese, exists because of
Yeah,
Ahmedabad.
yeah. It's
I
true.
mean, there was an ice cream sandwich, which was the most disgusting two slices of bread with a piece of ice cream and grated cheese on top of it and
I
chocolate
don't get it.
syrup. And I was like, okay, you cannot do that. And very similar to Manik Chowk is again on our last food tour, we covered, like I said, Indore, right? So Indore
Mm-hmm.
city is another city which is a little obsessed with cheese, with processed cheese. So yeah, I don't get it, but yeah, I guess, to each.
Yeah, to each its own, because I know I'm married to one, so and he loves it. So I love Ahmedabad street food as well. Ahmedabad is very high on street food.
Yeah.
So again, Indore, the night market that they have in Sarafa, right?
Yeah, Sarafa
That's
and
great
yeah,
fun
and
too.
Chappan, both of them.
And
Yeah.
Chappan as well. Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. I'm having very happy conversations talking about all these. How do we get in touch with you if we need to book any of these tours
Well,
through
we have a
Detours?
website called detoursindia.com. We're on Instagram also as Jonty_Detours India. Yeah, so or a phone call to the number that is listed on the website.
Awesome.
WhatsApp message. So
Badhiya hai. So I'll link all of these in the show notes. And I
thank you.
mean, we had a lovely episode on Hyderabad, which also talks about many of the places, but you have told extra things over and above that. And वो सुनने के बाद I was like, oh my God, मैंने ये नहीं देखा है, वो नहीं देखा है. अब तो few more have been added to that list, man. So Hyderabad is definitely on my list. I'm sure many more folks as well.
Yes.
Jonty, I had a phenomenal time yapping with you. Yeah, it was so good. So thank you so much for your
Thank you
super
for having
awesome
me.
chats.
Thank you. I was wondering how 2 hours are going to go by, but I realized it's almost 3.
Also, a special shout out to the Indian national food. Our favorite pani puri getting global exposure in Spain because of your beach party.
Correct.
Flavor of India,
No,
man.
and it's a. I mean, you would not disagree with me. It is a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
It is just, and it's one of those where people are like, how the hell have I lived my life without this? So
Oh, okay. Today evening, I have to have pani puri from somewhere, man. Too
same
much
here.
pani
I'm going
puri.
to go now to eat pani puris.
Oh my God, I love you. It's awesome. Okay, I'm keeping you away from pani puri and the Swiggy lunch that you had mentioned. So thank you so much, Jonty. It was
Bye bye.
super awesome, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay, bye bye. Thank you.
Thanks. See ya. Have a great day. Bye. That was a solid, fun episode with Jonty, right? And as always, we've put up lots of lovely pictures and videos that Jonty clicked on her vacation on our Instagram page. We are called Misadventures of a Sneaker. We've also added several of the recommendations that Jonty shared with us on our show notes, as well as details of Detours India, which is Jonty's travel company. Also, a note to our listeners. You'd be happy to know that we have now started a new service of curating travel itineraries to several destinations made just for you. So if you want to get a vacation planned, leave us a note on Instagram or DM us on our Substack page and we'll plan something super special for you. Also, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, would you like to support our team by buying us a coffee? If yes, head over to our show notes and click on support to contribute any amount you'd like. It will be a huge morale booster for us. Thank you.